Chapter 608. When everything in the chaos finally calmed down, the last ending also came to an end in a low valley not far from Mormon's. A small team walked through the wilderness under the night sky, carefully searching for something. The instruments in their hands had completely lost their effectiveness, but their movements did not seem lost. A wheelchair floated in the biting cold wind. The wheelchair floated in the air, and inside it sat a thin middle-aged man. The man was afraid of the cold, and his body was wrapped in thick cotton clothes. Most of the time he did not speak. His deathly still eyes clearly could not see anything, but the entire team followed the direction he pointed. Southwest. The blind man in the wheelchair coughed violently for a while and raised his hand with difficulty. Another 500 meters. The silent team turned around at almost the same time. As the wheelchair floated in the air, the man in the wheelchair coughed even more violently. "Lin Su, how are you?" A white-haired old man under the wheelchair looked up at the wheelchair in the air with an anxious look in his eyes. He had been keeping the wheelchair afloat, so he could clearly sense Lin Su's physical condition. "I'm fine." Lin Su shook his head and laughed in a hoarse voice. "Second uncle, go higher." The old man's arm moved slightly. Lin Su's voice rang out again, "A little higher." The old man gritted his teeth and controlled the wheelchair to continue rising. Lin Su closed his eyes and sensed for a while, then said softly, "Turn left, 300 meters away." Now that he had a precise location, the old man relaxed a little. He immediately lowered the height of his wheelchair. The wheelchair landed on the ground. Lin Su was sitting in it. His face was red, but his whole body was cold. "Why do you and Feng Ting value this woman so much?" The old man frowned as he looked at his nephew, who clearly did not have much time left. His tone was complicated. "It's not that I value him." Lin Su panted heavily, and his voice became more and more labored. "It's karma. I can see the karma on her. In the next hundreds of years, this will be the key to the Lin clan's continued prosperity. Big Brother believes in my karma, so the Lin clan appeared in Mormon's. Are you sure the cause and effect you speak of is with the woman you're looking for?" The old man looked at the Lin clan, and there was a different emotion in his tone. "I remember that the cause and effect you mentioned was Qin Weibai. And Qin Weibai is in Mormon's. That's what I find the most strange." Lin Su shook his head. As the metaphysics grandmaster of this generation of the Lin clan, he was not as famous as Xian Xuanzi and Great Master Wu in Zhongzhou State, but in the hearts of the people inside the Lin clan, he was equally unfathomable. However, at this moment, his thin face showed an unconcealable confusion. "What I saw at first was karma, and Qin Weibai was part of it. But I can't see through the master of Samsara Palace. Her fate is related to the general trend, but her karma is not in the general trend." The old man frowned. He had a confused look on his face. He was the uncle of Lin Su and Lin Fengting. He left the headquarters of the Lin clan more than 20 years ago and had not been heard from for many years. If it were not for the changes of the Lin clan in Mormons and the change of the patriarch, it was estimated that he would not return to the Lin clan in this life. With the changes of the Lin clan, more and more old people who had left the Lin clan for many years were returning. At this time, listening to the so-called general trend and cause and effect that his nephew said, he instinctively felt that there was something he did not like. The old man shook his head and muttered to himself, "It's good to avoid the world. It's relaxing. Many old guys in the clan think so. How difficult it is to really stand aloof from the world. The Lin clan can do it now because it has the strength now. But nothing will always change. The one in Beihai is already supreme. If the Lin clan doesn't move, how can there be real freedom in the future? Second uncle, you may not like the chaos in the clan now, but all this is for the stability of the Lin clan in the future." Blood gushed out of Lin Su's mouth. He wiped it casually, and his eyes were a little fanatical. "I can see the cause and effect, but I can't see through it. But it doesn't matter. It's good to find her tonight. 150 meters to the right." The team continued to move forward. The old man sighed and patted Lin Su on the shoulder. "Take care of yourself. It's just a life. Every minute I live is worth it. Don't worry about it. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page." Lin Su smiled, and a strange light flashed in his dead eyes. Our current direction may be the direction of the Lin clan in the future. I'm not as optimistic as you are. You saw that sword. How good can the result of the person who made that sword be? The old man shook his head and suddenly said, "How is Wang Tianzong's current state after that sword? I don't know martial arts. How do I know what will happen?" Lin Su shook his head with a smile and said calmly, "But no matter what, people have to fight for their own lives." Fight for their own lives. The old man narrowed his eyes thoughtfully. After a long search, the team finally stopped. Lin Su, who had calmed down a little, became excited again. He pushed the wheelchair forward quickly. The lush vegetation in front of him was completely crushed. In his sight, a slender woman in black curled up on the ground, trembling slightly. The armor on her body had been completely broken. Her body was no longer bloated. At this moment, she curled up on the ground, looking extremely delicate and delicate. Lin Su pushed the wheelchair closer to her. The woman seemed to notice something. Her body barely stabilized, and a voice sounded in Lin Su's ear, which was very faint. Lin Su struggled hard, fell off the wheelchair, and approached the woman. At this moment, he finally heard the woman's voice, which was almost a whisper. "It hurts," she said in a trembling voice, but tears poured out of her eyes as if they were out of control. Her willpower struggled in the trance and eternal darkness. She remembered the sword that pierced his heart in the snow that year. He said it really hurt. It turned out to be really painful. It really hurt. Lin Su looked at her quietly, with a somewhat complicated expression. Her body curled up hard as if trying to protect herself, but the vitality in her body was flowing away crazily like a broken dam. The sword light had passed, but the willpower that entered the transcendent realm had completely entered time and space. Lin Su was very close to her. He looked at the man's body curled up, half of his face buried in the soil, and the half of his face that was revealed after the man's mask was broken, revealing the side of his face that was incomparably exquisite and perfect. The uncontrollable willpower kept surging. With memories that seemed to be from a lifetime ago, Lin Su saw countless pictures, gratitude and resentment, love and hatred, magnificent and sentimental. In the other party's memory, he finally understood something. Lin Su smiled. His smile was a little dim, but it looked extremely peaceful. He quietly looked at the master of Samsara Palace, whose vitality was constantly flowing away, and whispered, "It turns out that you are the real cause and effect." For the Lin clan, Qin Weibai was cause and effect, so was Li Tianlan. But all causes and effects were related to the general trend. Qin Weibai, Li Tianlan, the Lin clan, the Wang family of Beihai, everyone had cause and effect with this world. But the master of Samsara Palace did not. She had nothing to do with the whole world or anyone. From the beginning to the end, all her cause and effect was with Li Tianlan. "It's all fake." He looked at the master of Samsara Palace and murmured to himself. The master of Samsara Palace could no longer respond. Her body no longer trembled, and the last vitality dissipated in her body. Endless coldness and darkness enveloped her, and her body became stiff. Lin Su seemed to see the real choice. He sat where he was and kept silent for a long time. The pictures that were transmitted directly into his mind by the will of the transcendent realm disappeared. Everything, including vitality, was finally over. It was completely over. The old man, who could be said to be the highest in the Lin clan according to seniority, walked over slowly and said in a low voice, "Go back, she has passed away." At this moment, the old man thought of the sword that tore heaven and earth apart not long ago, and the last words of the master of Samsara Palace. "You are all non-entities." The old man never thought that he would see such a proud person finish the last journey of her life and finally die in front of him. He patted Lin Su on the shoulder and wanted to pull him up. Lin Su didn't move. Gaze. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. Looking at the lifeless master of Samsara Palace on the ground, he shook his head gently and sighed in a low voice. "You won the sword, but you lost." The old man behind him frowned. Lin Su suddenly smiled and said softly, "Second uncle, You haven't come back in these years, so there are some things you don't know about my body. His face turned pale for a moment, and he said slowly, in fact, it wasn't very good 3 years ago. At that time, my brother found Wang Tianzong for me and wanted to trade an immortality with the Wang family of Beihai to prolong my life. That time when he went out, he met Li Tianlan and the master of Samsara Palace. The old man raised his eyebrows and said in a low voice, "Did Wang Tianzong refuse?" Lin Su shook his head. But the conditions were too harsh. Sword Emperor hoped that my brother could help him do 3 things. The old man fell silent. Even in the era of heavenly suns, experts at the peak of the invincible realm were the real big shots. Doing 3 things and agreeing to 3 things were 2 completely different concepts. If Lin Fengting had agreed at that time, what the Wang family of Beihai would get in the future would be much more precious than that immortality. My brother wanted to agree at that time, but I refused. My situation actually had little to do with vitality. Even if I got immortality, I would at most linger on for a few more years, which was meaningless. The most important thing was that I knew that I couldn't do anything in the last few years, so I might as well not do it. Then, that immortality fell into the hands of Li Tianlan, who needed it very much at that time. Lin Su's voice gradually became calm. The old man frowned and thought for a moment. Is this the cause and effect you mentioned? It's part of it. When I refused immortality, I didn't see what happened today. I just thought that if I refused, it would be better for the Lin clan. Using immortality for my poor life is a real waste of God's gift. The old man's eyes became deep. At this time, he didn't know why Lin Su suddenly talked about the Wang family of Beihai and immortality. I'm not saying this to regret anything, but now I'm sure of the fact that I saw 3 years ago again. Second uncle, I'm a useless person. If I stay in the Lin clan, I really can't play any role. He reached out and held the palm of the master of Samsara Palace, which had become a little cold. But she can? The old man's face changed dramatically. He wanted to stop him, but it was too late. An incomparably strong warm wave instantly filled the silent and cold world under the curtain of the night. Starlight shone down from the sky, and the world under the night sky was burning and heating up, with unimaginable mystery and luck. Lin Su's face grew calmer, but his eyes began to burn. Stop! The old man's face changed dramatically, and his voice was high and anxious. In any case, he never thought that they would end up like this after finding the master of Samsara Palace. Lin Su might not have thought of it either, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that he made the right decision at the most appropriate time. Lin Su laughed. His skinny face seemed to gradually fill up. In an instant, he had an indescribable elegance about him. His deathly still eyes gradually became lax. Second uncle, guess what I saw? The old man stared at Lin Su's face. His body trembled slightly. I saw it, Lin Su sighed in a low voice. I saw it was worth it. He held the master of Samsara Palace's palm hard. I'm a flash of fire, the strong warm tide surged and gathered. That was the temperature that could burn the world. The high temperature with a faint vitality completely surrounded the body of the master of Samsara Palace. Lin Su smiled softly, and his body gradually disappeared. Maybe he would be unwilling, maybe he would feel regret, but the moment he got close to the master of Samsara Palace, he really saw all the cause and effect, and he also saw it was worth it. His remaining life turned into a residual flame, with the last heat, and instantly reignited the slight vitality of the master of Samsara Palace. There seemed to be an invisible fire burning in the void. The flame swallowed Lin Su's body, and his last voice sounded. Everyone has to fight for his own life. End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 609. Before the morning light came, the night had passed. The sky before dawn was dark and solemn. As if bathed in the darkness of the whole world, he slowly walked to the shore from the sea and looked at the mountain that he had been thinking about day and night, which was now close at hand. The dim lights flickered on the mountain. It seemed to be far away, but it also seemed to be very close. He stood on the shore and watched quietly. After a long time, he gently stepped up to the shining mountain in front of him. The flowers and the moon were silent. The rich fragrance of flowers drifted from the other side of the mountain, filling the whole area with the sea breeze. The fragrance was pleasant. He walked in the floating fragrance and deeply sniffed the smell of the grass and trees around him. His eyes were all calm. The mountain was heavily guarded. He walked to the end of the 3-kilometer-long side road and finally reached the foot of the mountain. The military base that guarded the whole mountain operated day and night. The dazzling lights flickered with the smell of iron and blood, completely illuminating the whole foot of the mountain. He didn't hide his figure and slowly walked over. In an instant, countless dazzling lights shone on him. He stood there, looking straight at the endless lights, without saying a word. The whole base was boiling after a short silence. Countless soldiers rushed out and knelt in front of him. The lights disappeared. The voice that shook the whole mountain rolled through the sky. "Your Majesty!" "Get up." He silently looked at the crowd in front of him. After a long time, he waved his hand and said, "You did a good job." He walked forward and casually patted the shoulder of a nearby soldier. "Well done." He walked through the crowd unhurriedly and occasionally patted the shoulders or arms of the soldiers around him. This might be the first time for many soldiers of the Beihai Corps to have a close contact with their sword emperor. Countless people stared at his back with fanatical eyes, as if they were worshipping God. He walked through the crowd and looked back at the army that guarded Mount Dibing day and night. After a moment of silence, he whispered, "Thank you for your hard work." Boom! Amidst the uniform sound, countless soldiers seemed to want to kneel down again. He raised his hand. An extremely surging force suddenly gushed out from the incomparably calm heaven and earth. A huge force acted on everyone's body, causing everyone to stand on the spot. He shook his head and said lightly, "Beihai doesn't have this rule." He slowly turned around and walked along the mountain path to the peak. A hazy whiteness vaguely appeared on the horizon. It was extremely weak, but it dispelled the deepest darkness before dawn. Flowers and plants were in full bloom on Mount Dibing, and the water was murmuring. Countless subtle sounds were transmitted to his ears, like flowers blooming and withering. He stared deeply at every picture he saw, feeling extremely nostalgic. In his decades of life, this mountain had always been the most beautiful world in his eyes. The morning breeze with the smell of the sea blew over. It was midsummer in Zhongzhou State, but the morning wind was extremely cold. His steady footsteps trembled slightly. He clenched his fists hard, took a deep breath, and continued to move upward. The sweet morning air rushed into his throat. When his feet landed, he could no longer suppress the blood that spurted out of his mouth. He coughed violently, and every cough was accompanied by thick blood and broken internal organs. The wind continued to blow. The golden edges of the black costume shimmered, bright and dignified. His hair was losing its luster at a speed visible to the naked eye. It became dim, then white, and finally turned into a pale white without any vitality. In just a few seconds, with the blood he coughed out, the body that was calm and could almost carry the world had been filled with a sense of decay. He tried to stand up and insist on going up the mountain, but in the cold morning wind, his body moved forward against the wind and was finally blown to the ground. He had never experienced such weakness in his life. His body rolled for dozens of meters on the mountain road with an obvious slope, and finally grasped a small tree by the road. The blood was still flowing. He shut his mouth tightly and swallowed all the blood. With an incomparably calm gaze, he struggled to stand up and staggered towards a nearby pavilion. The stone chair in the pavilion was still cold in the middle of the night. He sat on the stone chair, leaning against the pillar behind him, and looked at the distant sky blankly. The hazy whiteness was still at the end of the sky. Not far in front of him was a pool of clear water, sparkling and reflecting the moonlight in the sky. He looked at it quietly and finally closed his eyes. Countless pictures flashed in his mind one by one, fast or slow, and they were unforgettable. The moonlight fell on him softly. He smiled softly, but his eyes were already blurred when he opened them. In the scattered and cold moonlight, he sat in the pavilion, looked up at the moon in the sky, and looked back at his past. In the quiet and cool world, he gently hummed a song with deep affection and melancholy. The silver boat, swaying, swaying, bending, hanging in the fluffy sky. What's your name? Summer solstice. Why are you here? I have no home. Uncle Wang brought me here. Oh, my name is Wang Tianzong. Brother, come with me. Your worries, 3322 Lon Lon, stop in my quiet heart. I like the moon, brother. I like you too. Call my name. Brother Tianzong, call your name. What's your name? Oh my God, what are you doing? Kwangtu, come and see what they are doing, ha. You said, how can a person not be lonely when he is in love, and worried when he is in love? Do you like her? Tell me after you think it through. I like her. Why? Because I like her very much. My luggage, lonely, alone, makes me feel melancholy. Uncle Li will keep an eye on him. The future of Beihai can't be pinned on this. It'll be fine, I'll solve these things. When it's over, let's go on a trip. Fool, you're the patriarch now. People are banished to the border. It's like walking into the 5th season. The day and night are disorderly and harmonious. The tide rises and falls willfully. There's no spring in the dictionary. Tianzong him he's dead. Li Kuangtu is dead. I'm amazing, right? How is she? This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. How is she? Say it. How is she? Your Highness, madam, are you going to say it or not? Are you going to say it or not? If you don't say it, I'll kill you. It's my incompetence, maybe. Trash. A bunch of trash. Get out, all of you. People squander their tears, avoiding the parting that's still in front of them. I dreamed of you just now. Don't talk. Pay attention to rest. It's okay. Be obedient. I'm here. Sleep a little longer. It'll be okay. Tianzong, if I'm not by your side, don't be silly. You'll always be by my side. Yeah, we still have to go on a trip. Yes, tomorrow. Let's go tomorrow, okay? Okay, tomorrow. You don't dare to think about tomorrow. I refuse to say goodbye. It's not worth it. You're more important than 2 portions of medicine. But it's really not worth it. If I say it's worth it, it's worth it. My body is already very poor. It's okay. We still have immortality. If I don't let you go, you can't go. Oh. Some people say that every time you say goodbye, there will be a star in the sky, and it will be extinguished. I've entered the invincible realm. That's great. The situation can be stabilized. Yeah, my man is the best. Do you think my newly cultivated flowers look good? You look the best. You're glib. How's your body? Do you feel uncomfortable? Very good. The best. Tianzong, these are the happiest 2 years of my life. When your body is completely stable, we'll go on a trip. Well, I want to go to many places. The silver boat, swaying, bending, hanging in the fluffy sky. Your worries, 3322 Lon Lon, stop on my quiet heart. You say, how can a person not be lonely when love is deep? When love is strong, you are worried. My luggage, lonely, alone, scattered, makes me feel melancholy. I'm exiled to the border, as if I've entered the 5th season. The day and night are in disorder and harmony. The tide rises and falls willfully. There's no spring in the dictionary. I'm squandering my tears, avoiding the parting that's still in front of me. You don't dare to understand. I refuse to say goodbye. Someone said that every time you say goodbye, there will be a star in the sky, and then it will go out. His voice gradually lowered until it was silent. A cold and delicate palm came around his shoulder, silently wiping away the blurriness in his eyes. Wang Tianzong held that palm. Even if he was exerting force, his strength was still extremely weak. I'm back, he whispered. Summer solstice answered and did not move. Wang Tianzong slowly turned his head. In his sight, there was a face full of tears, pear blossoms in the rain, extremely beautiful. Wang Tianzong looked at her in a daze. This was her most beautiful appearance. He had never gotten tired of seeing it all his life. Sorry, he suddenly smiled, a little bitterly. I still couldn't kill him. He wiped out most of the elites of the Purgatory of Heaven capital in Eastern Europe, wiped out the top experts of the entire Dark World, and really hurt Deity. But this was not what he wanted. He still couldn't kill him and give Summer Solstice an explanation. It doesn't matter. There will be chances in the future. Summer Solstice wiped her tears and said softly. In fact, there is a chance, but I don't dare to gamble. Wang Tianzong laughed at himself and said, the 13th floor, what the hell is going on? Summer Solstice's voice was a little trembling. 3 days had passed since that night in Eastern Europe. During these 3 days, she had never closed her eyes. Mormon's last sword strike could be said to be eternal, but only Summer Solstice knew what kind of injury Wang Tianzong had suffered in that sword strike. She knew her man very well. As long as there was a little possibility, Deity would not be alive. But now Deity was not dead, which showed that the situation at that time was very bad. The 13th floor, Summer Solstice said to herself. That sword formation is very complicated. Give me some time to study it, and I can also create a sword formation comparable to the 13th floor. The sword energy of the same origin has different functions. It is to activate and lock. Wang Tianzong recalled carefully, and his white hair swayed slightly in the wind. That can be said to simulate heaven and earth with sword intent. The 13th floor activated that sword strike and locked Mormons at the same time. So that sword strike couldn't be avoided and could only be taken by force. That's all? Summer Solstice looked at Wang Tianzong's white hair in a daze. If that's all, how did you become like this? Wang Tianzong was silent for a while. His tone became a little difficult and helpless. There's also fusion. Sword energy fusion. He smiled bitterly. The sword strike between me and the master of Samsara Palace was just the beginning. That sword strike was really strong and made me use my immortality. But the sword energy of that sword strike didn't dissipate at that time, so, fusion? Summer Solstice's voice was obviously trembling. Wang Tianzong nodded. The sword energy of the 13th floor has been integrated with my sword energy. The corners of his mouth twitched and he said slowly, in the past 3 days, all my efforts have been in vain. I can't suppress the sword energy of the 13th floor. The sword energy has taken root in my body. I can still fight, but the more power I use, the more damage the sword energy in my body will cause to me. In a short time, it's hard for me to find a solution. So Li Kuangti can't die, and I can't kill him. I can kill Tyrant, and Tyrant is nothing to worry about. If I kill Li Kuangtu, Feng Ting will definitely take action. With the sword intent in my body, if Feng Ting tries his best, I may not be his opponent. Even if I can win, once Li Kuangtu dies, the Li family will take revenge madly, and there will be internal and external troubles in the clan. He suddenly coughed violently. Countless bloodlines burst on his body, and blood flowed down his clothes. I still lost, Wang Tianzong murmured to himself, I lost. In the chaos of Eastern Europe, he got the benefits he wanted and broke through to become the chosen one. But he didn't win. If he didn't win, he would fail. I've sent someone to prepare what you need to recuperate. Summer Solstice's face was pale and bloodless. Drops of blood on Wang Tianzong's body were cutting his heart like a knife. Tianzong, what's the best result? It's hard to have the best result. Wang Tianzong hesitated. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. Maybe I will recover and can still maintain the current realm, but there will be flaws. I can be regarded as the chosen one, but my state is not good. What's the worst result? Summer Solstice grabbed Wang Tianzong's sleeve hard. The worst result. Wang Tianzong smiled. That's death. When he said this, his tone was extremely calm, without any unwillingness or regret. Actually, I thought about it. Wang Tianzong stood up with difficulty and grabbed Summer Solstice's palm. I'd better not come back for the time being. I'll recuperate outside first. He stared at Summer Solstice's face. I still can't help it. I always want to come back and see you. It's okay. Summer Solstice said softly. Her tone was no longer trembling, and she seemed to have completely calmed down. You can recuperate in peace. I'm at home. Xianxia stays in Eastern Europe to negotiate with Snow Country. Wang Tianzong said softly, Snow Country has little room for resistance. In a few days there should be clear news. The dark world of Snow Country belongs to the Wang family of Beihai in the future. But the situation is not too good. The only good news is that most of the forces in the dark world are no longer a threat to us. But the news of my recuperation must be kept secret. It must be kept secret. Summer Solstice said yes, extremely soft. Wang Tianzong walked forward with weak steps and whispered, I'm afraid my problem can't be solved in a short time. During my recuperation, all the affairs in the clan will be temporarily handed over to Dijiang to deal with. You should keep an eye on it. Dijiang? Summer Solstice was a little stunned and asked subconsciously, why not Xiaoyao? Let Xiaoyao take charge in Eastern Europe. Wang Tianzong's calm voice was filled with deep coldness. Summer Solstice's face kept changing. When Wang Tianzong's was silent, there was no problem that the young Wang Xingxiao could not take over the patriarch's position for the time being. But as Wang Tianzong's younger brother, Wang Xiaoyao was sent to Eastern Europe and Dijiang jumped up. There were too many problems in it. Dijiang and Wang Xiaoyao were both top experts of the half-step invincible realm, that was, the combat capability of the invincible realm. There was no difference in strength, and they were about to break through to the invincible realm. At this time, letting Wang Xiaoyao go to Eastern Europe and Dijiang stay was almost a clear message to the outside world that Wang Tianzong did not trust Wang Xiaoyao. Xiaoyao he, Summer Solstice asked cautiously, what did he do? Don't think too much. Wang Tianzong whispered, it's okay. He sighed softly. I just feel a little sorry for you. When I was young, I said I would take you on a trip, until now. In the next few years, I'm afraid I won't have time. You know I don't care about these things. Summer Solstice bit her lip hard and whispered, as long as you're good, I'm good, so you must get better, understand? Of course. Wang Tianzong nodded with a smile and coughed up another mouthful of blood. With the support of the immortality potion, his vitality was still stable. But the sword energy of the 13-story building had been torturing his body and will cruelly, which made him look weaker and weaker. The two did not choose to go to the top of the mountain. Instead, they turned near the top of the mountain and finally entered the most mysterious number 5 laboratory in Mount Dibbing. The laboratory was located underground. The 2 doors on the ground had been opened. The dark passage with light spread out, and no one knew how far it was. This was the place where Wang Tianzong was going to recuperate. Wang Tianzong quietly looked at the passage in front of him and was silent for a long time. In the chaos of Eastern Europe, the whole dark world was withering. Fire-flaming realm, thunder-shocking realm, half-step invincible realm, peak invincible realm, and even the chosen one, after the absolute chaos and glory, everything would be silent. He would also be silent in this passage. No one knew how long it would take, and no one even knew if he would come out again. Wang Tianzong turned his head and looked at Mount Dibbing in his sight. The dawn gradually brightened. The morning sun rose in the distant deep sea. The sun pierced the clouds, and the sky was gorgeous. A new era, he felt the warm sunshine and murmured to himself. No matter what era it is the era of Beihai. Summer Solstice said softly, and her tone was extremely firm. Wang Tianzong turned his head to look at his wife. He gently leaned over, kissed her on the face, and whispered, wait for me. He seemed to be afraid of something. He looked at Summer Solstice's eyes and said seriously, wait for me. I can wait. Summer Solstice smiled. Tears and smiles appeared on her face at the same time. Just don't be too long. Don't be too long. Wang Tianzong did not speak. He just touched his wife's hair, turned around, and walked into the long and deep passage. Summer Solstice stood where she was and looked at his back quietly. The torrent of time washed from the past to the present. She looked at her beloved husband, and the scenes of the past emerged with all the feelings of the past. There was laughter, happiness, and touching. He was satisfied and content with what he had. Beside him, what Summer Solstice felt most was silence and stability. With him in the Wang family of Beihai, what she felt most was silence and stability. Perhaps the things he had been carrying were too heavy, so summer solstice had never seen the slightest complacency and arrogance in him. Life was not complacent. Occasionally she could only feel cautiousness from him. The strength of Beihai, the hegemony of Beihai, and the sword light of the Sword Emperor swept everything. Everything was built on the foundation of caution. He was like the god of the Wang family of Beihai, sheltering everything and blocking all threats from the outside world. For more than 20 years, whether Beihai had returned to its peak or not, the whole Wang family of Beihai seemed to be having a leisurely and happy dream during this short but by no means short period of time. The foolish man never said much. He carried countless things on his shoulders. He cried and was tired, silent, and careful. Summer solstice was also immersed in this kind of dream for a time. But all the beauty was a dream and eventually became a bubble. Wang Tianzong's figure disappeared in the passage. Summer solstice looked at the figure before he disappeared. He finally bent down. His hair was white and his figure was stooped. Summer solstice stood there, tears gushing out. She woke up from the dream. In the future, the whole Wang family of Beihai would face the cruelty and truth that had been carried by him alone. Summer solstice didn't know how long it would take. She didn't even know whether it should be longer or shorter. She didn't dare to think about tomorrow. But he still insisted and refused to say goodbye. The door of the No. 5 laboratory gradually closed. Summer solstice took a deep breath and straightened her body. The sun leaped into the sky. Summer solstice raised her head and looked at the sky of the new era. The extreme coldness blew over with the wind. The scorching sun hung high, and the whole world was gloomy. This was the new era. It was a world without light. It was a world without dreams. End of Volume 4. End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 610. In the dim dream, there seemed to be countless voices thinking in his ears. The scene of the dream seemed to be changing every minute and every second. Fragmented information came in messily, and countless voices were still thinking, which made him upset. Li Tianlan rarely dreamed, but once he did, the content of the dream was often strange. Mountains and seas, fire and ice, saber and sword shadows, and the chaotic dream continued. He dreamed of meeting Qin Weibai for the first time in Huading. He dreamed that Dongqing Rushi took his hand and said that she had liked him for many years. He dreamed that Wang Yuetong looked at him with tears in her eyes and asked him why. He dreamed that the lonely mountain in Lin and appeared in the primeval forest where the Li family had been hiding for many years. He even dreamed that countless people wanted to kill him. In a trance, Li Tianlan felt as if he had died again and again. In the heart-wrenching pain, the shadow of the saber and the sword rushed toward him along with the raging fire. The scene changed to the hazy white mist of the manor. He dreamed that Qin Weibai was holding him tightly, the master of Samsara Palace stood beside him, and flaming fire stabbed him in the chest with a saber. In the distance, he vaguely heard Li Guangtu's roar. The night wind messed up the light and shadow. Qin Weibai flew up and rose. High in the sky. In the world full of starlight, there was a touch of black and white that tore apart heaven and earth. The sword light was like the sea. Qin Weibai, who flew high in the sky, turned into Dongqing Rushi, Wang Yuetong, and finally into a woman that Li Tianlan did not know. She rushed toward the sword light. Like a moth flying into the fire, Li Tianlan suddenly opened his eyes. The sunlight outside was blocked by the curtains. In the slightly dim environment, Li Tianlan sat up and shook his head. The trance in his mind began to disappear, and everything in front of him became real. This was a bedroom that was luxurious enough to make one's jaw drop. It was not the kind of bedroom that was piled up with countless gold and silver. The bedroom was slightly dark and warm, and there were details everywhere in the bedroom. The warm chandelier exuded a soft light, and the light shone on every corner, giving people a very comfortable visual enjoyment. Li Tianlan's eyes calmed down in the fastest time. He looked around and didn't know where he was for a moment. There was also a natural and rich fragrance floating beside the bed. Feeling the familiar smell, Li Tianlan was lost in thought. The pain in his chest was still spreading little by little. The wound didn't look big, but the damage it caused to his body was beyond his expectation. He didn't know how long he had been in a coma, but now he felt the pain in his chest. It would still take time for the scar to heal. He slowly rubbed his forehead. His mind was in a mess. Countless questions popped up in his head, but suddenly he didn't want to know the answers. Light footsteps sounded outside the door. The door was pushed open and Qin Weibai, who was dressed in plain clothes, walked in with a delicate bowl in her hands. Li Tianlan looked at her and was stunned. Looking at Li Tianlan, she was also stunned. After a short silence, she smiled and said softly, "When did you wake up?" Her smile was clear and indifferent. There was no surprise in it, but it was filled with boundless affection. "I just woke up." Li Tianlan's mind seemed to be a little slow. He slowly moved his body and said, "Where are we?" Qin Weibai came over and handed Li Tianlan the small bowl with Chinese medicine in her hand. She whispered, "Drink it while it's hot. It's good for your injury." Li Tianlan subconsciously took it and drank the slightly hot Chinese medicine in one gulp. Qin Weibai took out a candy and put it in Li Tianlan's mouth. She looked at him softly as if she was coaxing a child. Li Tianlan thought about it with the candy in his mouth. His brain had realized the strangeness of things, but his thinking was still a little slow. "How long have I been in a coma?" 5 days. Qin Weibai handed over a glass of warm water and said, "Compared to us, this chapter is not over. Please turn the page. It's a day earlier than expected." Li Tianlan took a sip of water and muttered to himself, 5 days? Eastern Europe. He held the glass of water, and his arms trembled slightly. Qin Weibai sat down next to him and reached out to hold his palm. She said in a soft and cautious tone, "Don't think too much, Tianlan. It's over. It's over. It's over." Li Tianlan suddenly smiled, a little self-deprecating. The last scene before he woke up was the desperate scene of Wang Tianzonging defeating all the top experts in the dark world. In a coma, it seemed that it was just a dream, and it was over. "What's the result?" he asked, looking at Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai hesitated and wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. "What's the result?" Li Tianlan looked at her eyes, which were shining with charming brilliance. There are many kinds of results, and there are also many kinds of uncertain results, specific to individuals and specific to the general trend. Although things have passed, many things are still very chaotic. The specific results have not come out for the time being. Li Tianlan's heart gradually sank, and his chest ached again. He forced himself to calm down and asked slowly, "Did we lose?" "For the moment, we just didn't win." Qin Weibai held Li Tianlan's hand and said softly, "Tianlan, many things involve too much. In fact, there is no winner or loser. This is the case in Eastern Europe. The essence of this chaos is the future and survival. From the beginning, there is no winner. The current result is in line with expectations. The essence is the future and survival." Li Tianlan looked into her eyes. "My future and survival?" Qin Weibai hesitated. Then she nodded. "Yes." Li Tianlan was speechless for a while. He led the Snowdance Corps into Eastern Europe on behalf of Zhongzhou State. It could be said that he participated in everything. But even as a person who experienced it personally, he could not tell how much the chaos in Eastern Europe involved. All the dark forces were deeply involved in Eastern Europe. The murderous weapons were broken, the invincible realm experts were killed, the divine and holy lists were fragmented, and the entire dark world was almost completely withered. The essence of all this was for his future and survival. If those fallen invincible realm experts knew this so-called essence, what would they feel? Li Tianlan held the cup and thought about Qin Weibai's conclusion. A chaotic situation where there would be no victor. It was a chaotic situation for his survival and future. If all the results were in line with expectations, what would happen to Wang Tianzong? What about the master of Samsara Palace, who really planned the chaos? How is the palace master? Li Tianlan suddenly said, "Take me to see her." Qin Weibai looked at him quietly. There was a different kind of emotion in her deep and bright eyes. It seemed to be sympathy, but also something else. Such a gaze seemed to carry a heavy force, pulling his heart down continuously. Li Tianlan waited for Qin Weibai's answer. Qin Weibai did not answer. She took out her mobile phone and handed it to Li Tianlan. "The password is the date we first met," Qin Weibai said. Qin Weibai said with an unnatural look on her face. Li Tianlan entered a string of numbers without hesitation and unlocked the mobile phone. A video that had been played countless times and spread far appeared in front of Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan subconsciously slowed down his breathing and clicked the play button. The picture was silent, but that almost eternal sword light lit up in the extremely distant night sky. That was the sword that put an end to the whole era. The sword broke the sky, tore the city apart, and shortened the distance on the edge of life and death with an unprecedented bright sword. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. The light burst out completely and became the final ending. Li Tianlan's face gradually turned pale. Through the screen, he could not feel the sword intent of this sword. But in the endless surging colorful light, he could roughly imagine the power of this sword and the price to pay for this sword. An invincible realm expert could not make such a sword. Not even a half-step chosen one. This was the real supreme sword light. It tore the world apart and obliterated everything. This was the last sword move of the master of Samsara Palace in the Dark World. She gave up everything without hesitation. When this sword move was made, no matter what Wang Tianzong did, the master of Samsara Palace was bound to die. The so-called bound meant that there would be no accident. Li Tianlan's hand was shaking and could hardly hold the mobile phone. He clicked the screen with his trembling hand several times before pressing the play button again. Over and over again. In the silent picture, the sword light seemed to be the final farewell. Qin Weibai left and then walked in. She held a huge wooden box in her hands and put it beside Li Tianlan. She whispered, "This is for you." Li Tianlan turned his head numbly and opened the wooden box in a daze. The dark giant sword lay in the wooden box. The sun, moon, stars, mountains, lakes, and seas were no longer lustrous. This was Xianyuan Feng. Xianyuan Feng, who belonged to him in the future. Li Tianlan stretched out his hand and gently stroked the blade of the sword. He muttered to himself, "You promised to live. You promised." Qin Weibai lowered her head, and her eyes were slightly red. "Is this what she wants? For my survival and future?" Li Tianlan looked at Qin Weibai, and his voice was a little sad. "This is what she wants most." Qin Weibai whispered, "It can even be said that this is the whole meaning of the existence of the Samsara Palace." Li Tianlan did not speak. He thought of the hug before the blade pierced his chest again. It was so heavy, so gentle, so reluctant. Thousands of words and countless times seemed to be condensed in that hug. At this time, in retrospect, all the emotions at that time were clearly determined. "I'm sorry," a light voice rang in his ears. Li Tianlan closed his eyes and whispered, "Why?" She said it before. "There shouldn't be shadows in your sky," Qin Weibai whispered. Li Tianlan opened his eyes, and his eyes were in a trance. At this moment, he remembered the meeting with military counselor in the East Emperor Palace in Huading more than 3 years ago. It seemed that military counselor wanted to tell him something from that time. He said that what the master of Samsara Palace wanted was a sky without shadows. Until this moment, only then did Li Tianlan realize that what she wanted was his sky without shadows. The chaos had already passed. Sometimes it was vigorous, sometimes it was silent. He did not see any of them. But those sword lights and shadows that belonged to the Wang family of Beihai, Kunlun City, and many other forces, which were always hanging over his head and would fall at any time, finally dissipated with the chaos. His future was only bright. The eternal night of Mormons continued. Yuzhou had ushered in a clear sky. Li Tianlan walked to the bed, opened the curtains, and opened the window. The warm and bright sunshine shone on him. In his sight, there was a clear sky. Li Tianlan thought about the hug quietly. Something in his heart seemed to be quietly breaking, and it disappeared completely with the sunshine. His heart was blank. P.S. The first chapter that I haven't seen for a long time. End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 611. Qin Weibai looked at Li Tianlan's back quietly. In the bright sunshine, his figure was facing the window, and it was a little dazzling. She looked at the blurred figure and felt lonely. Qin Weibai looked down at her phone. The video played again on the screen had come to an end, and the sword light had disappeared. The era that once belonged to Sword Emperor, Li Guangtu, Gu Xingyun, Arsis, and many others had officially ended with the complete collapse of this sword light. Everything had become the past. At this moment, Qin Weibai was more sure than anyone that the future world belonged to Li Tianlan. But maybe he would never know what he had lost in that chaos. Qin Weibai felt a little complicated. As the sword light fell, she was still unsure how she felt. She felt relaxed, relieved, and free. She felt as if she had lost all her shackles. Her mind was completely relaxed, but there was no joy or sadness. She was calm and quiet, as if she was gradually losing herself. Li Tianlan seemed to have become her only direction in the world. She walked over gently, put her arms around his waist from behind, and slowly exerted force. "Did you find the body of the palace master?" Li Tianlan patted her palm and asked in a low voice. Qin Weibai shook her head and said nothing. Li Tianlan didn't ask again. That sword light was the strongest sword light he had ever seen in his life, and it was also the limit of his imagination. It was exactly the same as the end of martial arts he saw. When he drove that sword with the peak of the invincible realm, it was hard to say whether the body of the master of Samsara Palace was still there. Li Tianlan's heart ached slightly, and the vast emptiness continued to spread in his heart. All his emotions seemed to be disappearing. The warm sunshine was telling him clearly and cruelly that everything in Eastern Europe had passed away, including the master of Samsara Palace and many people. And the beautiful future built on the bones of Milk Mountain was waving to him. A coma, the transition between the old and the new eras, and the great sense of confusion kept hitting his will. Li Tianlan turned around and held Qin Weibai's body tightly in his arms. The fragrance of nature wafted into his nose. This was the smell he was most attached to and even obsessed with. It was the same feeling when they first met in Huading. It was the same feeling when they snuggled up to each other in the Sky Academy. It was also the same feeling on that dreamlike night. It was the same feeling every time he saw her. Li Tianlan gently kissed Qin Weibai's delicate neck and asked hoarsely, "How are the others?" Qin Weibai's body was a little stiff. Her two small hands subconsciously grabbed Li Tianlan's back and she said softly, "Not good, not bad." Both Li Guangtu and Li Shi are seriously injured, and they are still in a coma. According to current observation, their foundations have been damaged to varying degrees. However, Li Guangtu's foundation is broken and then rebuilt. The immortality seal can be said to outshine others in reshaping the foundation, so it is possible for Li Guangtu to recover. Although this possibility is small and it takes a long time, such a possibility does exist. As for Li Shi, her injury is lighter than Li Guangtu's, but she should fall from the peak of the invincible realm. Mr. Lin woke up once. He is in the best state at present, but he is also seriously injured. But in contrast, he can recover in the fastest time. In a sense, in today's dark world, Mr. Lin is already the strongest. Li Tianlan gently bit Qin Weibai's neck, under her command. "This chapter is not over. Please turn the page." He shrank his head subconsciously and straightened his body. He whispered, "This is not a good thing." Qin Weibai sighed softly. "But it's not too bad." Li Tianlan said, The Lin clan had been hiding from the world. It was a behemoth whose comprehensive strength was almost no weaker than that of the Wang family of Beihai. In this chaotic situation, no matter whether Lin Fengting, as the patriarch, would change his mentality or not, his hiding from the world could not be changed. This was a deep-rooted idea that countless branches of the Lin clan had maintained for many generations. Now that Lin Fengting had become the top expert in the dark world, his identity suddenly became extremely sensitive. If the Lin clan wanted to continue to stand aloof from the world, Lin Fengting could not intervene in anything. After all, the top expert and one of the strongest experts were two different concepts. At this time, any move of Lin Fengting would be magnified thousands of times, and then people would figure out the overall will of the Lin clan. As for the Lin clan entering the secular world, it was also unlikely that it would enter the secular world in a short time. The concept of standing aloof from the world was deeply rooted in the entire Lin clan. Even the most powerful branches in the outside world basically did not have any conflicts with others. No one dared to provoke such a family, nor did they bother to provoke others. Even if Lin Fengting wanted to lead the Lin clan into the secular world, it would take at least one generation to change this idea. Now that the Lin clan had the top expert in the dark world, it could be fearless of everything. However, Lin Fengting's hands and feet were trapped by the deep-rooted idea of avoiding the world within the Lin clan. This also meant that even if Lin Yuxian developed in Zhongzhou state, the Lin clan could not give him too much support. After all, once the Lin clan showed certain tendencies, it would be followed by countless roping in and suppression. Whether the Lin clan could bear it or not, Lin Fengting was unwilling to let the Lin clan become the center of trouble. No matter what happens to the Lin clan, I will handle it well. Qin Weibai touched her neck that had been lightly bitten, and her face was slightly red. A simple and natural ring on her hand reflected misty colors in the sun. This was originally part of the original deal. You will handle it well? Li Tianlan fixed his eyes on Qin Weibai's ring, and his eyes slightly narrowed. He did not know this ring, but he clearly remembered that this ring had been worn on Lin Fengting's hand before. This is the token of the patriarch of the Lin clan. Qin Weibai handed her hand to Li Tianlan and whispered, I am now the acting patriarch of the Lin clan, and I have been tacitly approved by the largest branches of the Lin clan. With Mr. Lin's support, I will soon take over everything and handle everything well. Li Tianlan looked at the ring in Qin Weibai's hand with a dull face. The patriarch of the Lin clan. Qin Weibai. He didn't know about such a deal, so when the two words were combined together, he only felt crazy. Was the Lin clan crazy, or was Lin Fengting crazy? He handed the Lin clan to you? Li Tianlan's mouth moved, and he asked incredulously. It's escrow. The time limit is about 20 years. The specific situation depends on the growth of the next heir of the Lin clan. Qin Weibai explained briefly. So, Li Tianlan looked at Qin Weibai. Will you belong to the Lin clan in the future? No. Qin Weibai shook her head gently. I have always belonged to you, and the Lin clan now belongs to me. Li Tianlan smiled bitterly. The change of the supreme power of the Lin clan was destined to be just the beginning. The extremely chaotic situation would end. Please turn the page if this chapter is not over. After that, the dark world, which was being shuffled, seemed to return to the original point. No one knew how many things would happen in the following time. How about Eastern Europe? Li Tianlan asked. President Li Huaqing returned to Zhongzhou state from Eastern Europe yesterday. Our position in the 5 Eastern European countries is stable. The biggest problem is in Snow Country. At present, everyone, including Zhongzhou state, is talking to Snow Country. However, Snow Country's intention is very clear. They have been contacting the Wang family of Beihai. At present, it seems to be nothing, but when things are really in a stalemate to a certain extent, Zhongzhou state may not be willing to fight with the Wang family of Beihai to the end. It's not that they don't have the strength, but it's unnecessary. But it's different for us. Li Tianlan's voice was a little cold. Qin Weibai nodded. I've arranged some backups, but I don't know if they are useful. As soon as she finished speaking, the text message prompt on her mobile phone rang. Qin Weibai picked up the phone and looked at it, narrowing her eyes slightly. It's useless. She whispered, I just received news that Wang Xianxia, who was responsible for negotiating with Snow Country on behalf of the Wang family of Beihai, was ambushed on his way to the hotel after leaving the palace of Snow Country. The assailant was General Yellencat, a famous general of Snow Country. The general led dozens of trusted subordinates to attack him on Kamas Wissen Street. Together with his 2 deputies, they were killed by Wang Xianxia on the spot. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes. Qin Weibai's voice continued to ring. He only used 1 sword stroke. Li Tianlan finally turned around. Yellencat? He is an expert of the half-step invincible realm and the former marshal of Snow Country. He was demoted because of a command mistake, but he is still one of the few experts in Snow Country. Of his 2 deputies, one is already at the peak of the Thundershocking realm, and the other has stabilized the Thundershocking realm and has Thunder Vein. Qin Weibai's voice was quiet. Wang Xingxiao only used 1 sword stroke? Li Tianlan laughed. Only 1 sword stroke. Qin Weibai whispered, 1 sword stroke of the fire-flaming realm. He killed a half-step invincible realm expert with 1 sword stroke, along with a Thundershocking realm expert at the peak of the Thundershocking realm and a Thundershocking realm expert with Thunder Vein. The news of this battle had spread throughout the Dark World in the shortest time. But when all the forces in the world were guessing whether Wang Tianzong was injured in the eternal sword stroke, or to what extent he was injured, the sword light of the Wang family of Beihai had shone again in the Dark World. 1 sword stroke of the fire-flaming realm. But the power of this sword stroke was almost close to that of the invincible realm. All those who had been lucky enough to go to the Wang family of Beihai and overlook the stage formidable person of Mount Dibing should remember the words carved on the stone of formidable person. A place where heroes come forth in large numbers. Li Tianlan was silent and did not speak. Qin Weibai was also silent until her cell phone rang again. Qin Weibai looked down at it. Her eyes became a little strange. Tianlan, I received the latest news here. Her voice was subtle. Jiang Shangyu, the vice marshal of the Snowdance Corps, appeared in Reki City. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. He looked at the sunshine outside the window in silence. After a long time, he nodded. It seemed that he was responding to Wang Xingxiao's news, but also to the intelligence of Jiang Shangyu's appearance. He replied, end of this chapter, bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 612. Qin Weibai was still a little hesitant. The rise of Wang Xingxiao and Jiang Shangyu was unexpected but also expected. In any case, it was not something that would make people worry too much. It could only be regarded as a new atmosphere at the beginning of a new era. She hesitated because she didn't know how to tell Li Tianlan. For all parties, the chaos in Eastern Europe could be said to be a heavy loss, even a tragic one. This was a chaotic situation with no winner. It was doomed. They were failing in all aspects. Some were unable to recover from the setback, while others were silently healing with heavy losses. Wang Tianzong didn't win. The master of Samsara Palace didn't win. Li Tianlan, who seemed to get the most, didn't win. Qin Weibai had the confidence to deal with a lot of things, but at this time, she felt that the news she was about to speak and the situation she might face next were extremely tricky. It was about Dongqing Rushi's injury. It was the devil troop of the Wang family of Beihai that seriously injured Dongqing Rushi. Wang Yuetong, the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai. She was running around for Li Tianlan in Tianan. This was destined to be an equally chaotic entanglement. What would Li Tianlan do when he knew? He couldn't give up anything, but he was destined to lose something. The master of Samsara Palace, Wang Yuetong, Dongqing Rushi. Such a result was equally tragic for Li Tianlan. Qin Weibai thought quietly, and her face was a little pale. What's wrong? Li Tianlan turned around and looked at Qin Weibai and asked. Qin Weibai shook her head and didn't speak. Li Tianlan didn't care and said softly, "Go out for a walk." He walked over and naturally took her palm. Qin Weibai walked out with her head down and followed Li Tianlan, extremely docile. The morning breeze blew over the moment the door opened with the light fragrance of flowers. Everything was green and bright. Unlike the bedroom, which was full of modern style and comfortable layout, everything outside was as exquisite and beautiful as an ancient palace. There were flowers and green grass, neat and clean small stone roads, and the clear sound of running water could be heard not far away. Li Tianlan looked at the mottled wall in front of him, but it didn't look old. Instead, it looked extremely vicissitudes. He asked again, "Where is this?" "Prince Yang's mansion." Qin Weibai hesitated and whispered. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes. Before he came of age, he spent most of his life in the Li family's camp built in the primeval forest. However, he was no stranger to Yuzhou. It was just that in the mouth of Li Honghe back then, this bustling big city was like a distant fantasy. He had heard of Prince Yong. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. The mansion was one of the largest and most complete relics of the previous dynasty preserved in Yuzhou. It was said that it had been opened to the public 100 years ago. At that time, it was a very famous scenic spot in Yuzhou. However, it had been sealed for nearly 100 years. Li Tianlan never thought that he would appear here after waking up. He thought of the bedroom he had woken up in. Where is this? Li Tianlan finally turned around to look at Qin Weibai and asked seriously. This is... Qin Weibai hesitated and finally smiled bitterly. This is the property of the Bai family. The Bai family obtained the property rights of the Prince of Yang's residence. In recent years, after the Bai family renovated the residence, they treated it as... She looked into Li Tianlan's eyes and held his hand hard. After the Bai family renovated it, they have made it your wedding house. Wedding house, Li Tianlan murmured to himself. Looking at Qin Weibai's eyes, his heart sank slightly. In the eyes of the Bai family, the bride of the wedding house related to him was naturally Dongqing Rushi. But since he woke up until now, Dongqing Rushi had never appeared. His voice became a little hoarse. Where is Rushi? Rushi is still recovering. Feeling Li Tianlan's cold palm, Qin Weibai bit her lip. She is in a private hospital nearby. Mr. Lin, Li Guangtu, and the others are all there. I can take you there. Li Tianlan stood there in silence for a long time. He couldn't wait to leave with Qin Weibai. Instead, he was thinking about something carefully. Under the sun, his pale face returned to calmness in the fastest time, and even looked a little indifferent. He sat down in front of a stone table in the garden. How is her injury? He asked in a low voice. Before he passed out, Dongqing Rushi was still standing beside him. He knew that she had the invincible sword move, but he didn't think that Dongqing Rushi could play a big role in the battlefield of the Chosen One. Then who hurt her? How was her injury? I don't know, Qin Weibai was a little confused. Since she came to Prince Yang's mansion, she had devoted all her attention to Li Tianlan. There was no accurate news about Dongqing Rushi, but there were some possible conclusions that countless experts had already come out a few days ago. It is said that the injury is very serious. She looked at Li Tianlan's calm and somewhat indifferent face, and suddenly became a little flustered. But some things couldn't be hidden after all. In Eastern Europe, you were in a coma not long ago. Rushi forcibly pulled out the silent sword, but she couldn't bear the sword intent of the silent sword. Her body was seriously injured, and there is no possibility of recovery at present. If this chapter is not over, please turn the page. She took a deep breath. If there is no accident, she may become a vegetable. The cruel truth was like a knife cutting Li Tianlan's heart crazily. In her sight, Li Tianlan's face was as hard as a rock, without any change. A vegetable? He thought of the little woman who liked to hide in his arms and gently bite his ear, a vegetable. The little woman who said that she had known him for many years and liked him for many years, a vegetable. The little woman who said she would protect him, a vegetable. Li Tianlan pressed his lips tightly. Puff! Dark red blood sprayed directly from his mouth and dyed the stone path red. Lemon. Qin Weibai rushed over and held him tightly in her arms. There will be a way. Believe me, there will be a way. A vegetable. Li Tianlan's eyes became colder and colder. But in that situation, why did Dongqing Rushi choose to pull out the sword? Qin Weibai didn't speak. But Li Tianlan asked again. Shortly after you were in a coma, someone attacked the manor and broke Jiang Qinsong's 30-meter mortal world domain. At that time, the only power around us that could protect you was Rushi and silence. I will protect you. A vegetable, Li Tianlan gritted his teeth, and everything in his sight was spinning wildly. He struggled to stand up and whispered, Who? Beihai, Beihai. Devil troop, Devil troop. Li Tianlan thought of the strange red light he had seen on the trial day and didn't speak. Tunman. Qin Weibai called out to her. Li Tianlan glanced at her and whispered, There will be an explanation. He was silent for a while and continued, There will be. The morning breeze under the sun blew over, and the branches shook with fragrance. The chirping of birds and the clear sound of running water came from afar. Li Tianlan looked at the antique Prince Yong's mansion in front of him. This was his wedding room. But in the wedding room, there might be no bride for a long time, maybe forever. The empty Prince Yong's mansion. The bridal chamber was empty. Li Tianlan lowered his head and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He whispered, "There will be an explanation." End of this chapter. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 613. The morning sun gradually turned into a scorching sun. The sunlight grew blazing hot. The high temperature enveloped the prince's mansion, permeating through the flowers and water. Qin Weibai stood in front of Li Tianlan in a white dress, like a statue that gradually lost its spirit qi. In the quiet environment, Li Tianlan, who had been silent for nearly the whole morning, finally stood up and said calmly, "I'll go and have a look." He paused. Before he could say anything, Qin Weibai had already said considerately, "I won't go." After Dongqing Rushi fell into a coma, there happened to be a high-level conference in Yuzhou recently. Bai Qingqian, who came to Yuzhou for the conference, declined all unnecessary social engagements and spent most of her time running between the hospital and the prince's mansion. She didn't say anything to Qin Weibai. But now that Li Tianlan woke up and appeared in front of Bai Qingqian with Qin Weibai, no matter who Bai Qingqian was, she would inevitably have some ideas when she saw Dongqing Rushi in a coma and then Qin Weibai. Li Tianlan nodded. "Have a good rest." He smiled and said softly, "I'm fine." His tone was cold and emotionless. All the sadness, anger, and murderous intent seemed to disappear with silence. He walked along the path to the gate of the mansion. Countless flowers and plants swayed in the breeze. Li Tianlan pursed his lips tightly. The whole world in his sight began to turn pale. The Bai clan's private hospital was less than 500 meters away from the Prince of Yongqing's residence. Nominally, the hospital belonged to the Bai clan, but in reality, it was collectively built by the giant group. Large amounts of money had been spent, and the most advanced equipment and top-notch doctors had flocked to the hospital. It was no exaggeration to say that any nurse here, if placed in another hospital, would not be inferior to a professional doctor. The hospital was neither too big nor too small. The scenery was pleasant and it was not deserted on weekdays. Some retired big shots of the giant group almost recuperated here all year round. Many times, the collective decisions of the giant group were made here. When Li Tianlan walked into the hospital, due to the gradually rising temperature, several old people who were playing chess under the tree just put away the chessboard and planned to move the battlefield. Both sides came to the elevator almost at the same time. Li Tianlan nodded and looked at the opened elevator. He said in a calm voice, "After you." "Forget it, I'm getting old. I'll just treat standing for a while as exercise. His Highness is busy with urgent matters. You go first, we still have to wait for an old friend." An old man with white hair and beard in a tang suit smiled and looked at Li Tianlan with extremely friendly eyes. Li Tianlan was a little confused. Now he was really not in the mood to be polite, so he nodded and went straight into the elevator. The elevator gradually rose. The old man's lips moved slightly as he looked at the constantly changing numbers beside the elevator. "Old Su, this person is very popular now. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page." An old man carrying a chessboard walked in front of the white-haired old man and said meaningfully. Elder Su, who had white hair and beard but was still full of vigor, was silent for a moment. He smiled and said, "Hot stuff. A few days ago, I heard that he secretly returned to Yuzhou and has been recuperating his wounds. But it doesn't seem like it." "Young man, maybe it's because your body is recovering well?" The old man caressed the chessboard in his hand and said casually, "The chaos in Eastern Europe has become like this. No matter what has been lost, at least in the eyes of others, this person and the Wang family of Beihai have gained the most. My second son is still in Wulan State. I heard that this person has returned to Yuzhou and has called me twice to visit this little highness." Elder Su smiled and shook his head. "Unfortunately, today is not the right time. I heard that the injury of the little girl from the Dongqing family is not optimistic." The old man carrying the chessboard hesitated. "It doesn't affect the overall situation. Marshal Li's position can't be changed. Elder Su shook his head. Marshal Li? The old man pinched the chessboard thoughtfully. As long as we work together, he is Marshal Li. Elder Su smiled meaningfully. You've heard the rumors recently? How can I not hear such a big movement? The old man smiled bitterly. Those from the southeast and Kunlun repeatedly asked us to carefully consider Marshal Li's rank of marshal and even question the military merits of the Snowdance Corps. It's a mess. We can work together, but what this little highness does next is also the key. In terms of strength, I don't have to worry about his character. Elder Su smiled and said softly with emotion, Zhongzhou State will be very lively next. The old man nodded. For Minister Dongqing, this should be an opportunity. Elder Su said yes and did not speak. As the loosest giant group among the six, Li Tianlan's initial appearance caused many people to feel uneasy. Dongqing Wudi's unsparing support made the giant group constantly criticized. However, with the outbreak of the chaos in Eastern Europe, all this was temporarily suppressed. When Li Tianlan took over the 5 Eastern European countries centered on Wulan State, the atmosphere inside the giant group began to change. Dongqing Wudi acted quickly. Taking advantage of Li Huaqing's visit to Eastern Europe, he directly placed the cake of the 5 Eastern European countries in front of everyone in the giant group. No one disliked benefits. The huge benefits made the giant group completely united. It naturally accepted Li Tianlan and acquiesced to his position. Not to mention other places in Eastern Europe, just the 5 Eastern European countries were enough to make the giant group eat a lot every day. Please turn the page if this chapter is not over. Li Tianlan was equivalent to a cake maker. As long as he grasped the dominance of the 5 Eastern European countries, Li Tianlan's position in the giant group would become more and more stable. This was the best opportunity for Dongqing Wudi to rectify the loose atmosphere of the giant group and even let Li Tianlan take over. The elevator stopped on the 9th floor and then went all the way down. Elder Su smiled. Isn't that his attitude? He came to see his fiancée as soon as he got better. Is that a reassurance to us old guys? The old man holding the chessboard laughed. Just as he was about to speak, a sudden ringing of the phone suddenly rang. At the same time, Elder Su's phone was also ringing. The two of them looked at each other and answered the phone at the same time. Just after listening to a few words, their faces suddenly changed. When Elder Su's mobile phone fell to the ground, the sound of the chessboard hitting the floor also rang out. The chess pieces rolled, which was extremely crisp. The two old men who had extraordinary influence in the giant group looked at each other and laughed at the same time. This day was August 31st in Zhongzhou State. Under the scorching sun, when the news from the southwest spread in Zhongzhou State with sword intent, countless people made different reactions in addition to being stunned. Some laughed, some were angry, and some were dull. August 31st in Zhongzhou State. Wei Kunlun, the Nirvana sword master of Mount Shu, who had been in closed-door training and had been silent for several days, had officially broken through and entered the invincible realm. The former invincible realm had fallen silent. The new invincible realm came into everyone's sight. The wind and clouds changed. The pace of the new era was steadily moving forward. And this exciting news was constantly spreading with intelligence that no one knew whether it was good news or bad news. Wei Kunlun made a very important decision as soon as he came out of closed-door training. While the news from the southwest was still spreading in Zhongzhou State, the new invincible realm expert in Zhongzhou State had boarded the plane to Yuzhou with his 3 personal disciples. After the news was repeatedly confirmed countless times, it finally became a fact. Wei Kunlun, the new invincible realm expert in Zhongzhou State, wanted to find a famous teacher for his 3 personal disciples who had been stuck in the bottleneck period. The famous teacher was in Yuzhou. Wei Kunlun wanted his 3 disciples to learn swordsmanship from Li Tianlan in the next period of time. The wind and clouds surged. Mount Shu, which had been low-key for many years with thousands of sword intent, appeared for the first time in the new era under the sky without shadow. It appeared in front of everyone and appeared beside Li Tianlan. And the pace of the new era was still going on. End of this chapter. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 614. The ninth floor was the top floor of the hospital and also the quietest area in the whole hospital. Occasionally, nurses and doctors shuttled back and forth with light and quick footsteps. Everyone's face was tense and solemn. As soon as the elevator door opened, Li Tianlan noticed a few bright red letters on the wall. He didn't understand English and didn't know the full name of these letters, but he knew the meaning of these letters when put together. The ninth floor was the most serious place in the hospital. The intensive care unit, or the intensive care unit. Li Tianlan looked at the bright red letters in front of him and was silent for a long time. His breathing was getting deeper and deeper. Under his calm and emotionless cold eyes, his breath was trembling slightly. Dongqing Rushi was the only injured person in the intensive care unit. Li Tianlan didn't want to think about the worst, but she stayed here. Even in the most optimistic view, Dongqing Rushi was still in danger. The Wang family of Beihai. The Devil Troop. Wang Tianzong's exchange. The Sword Emperor wanted to use the Devil Troop to exchange Li Tianlan, but Dongqing Rushi was seriously injured. Wang Tianzong wouldn't think it was worth it. Li Tianlan wouldn't think it was worth it either. Neither of them was worth it. Li Tianlan walked out of the elevator and clenched his fists calmly. Light footsteps sounded in the corridor. Bai Qingqian, who was wearing a light-colored home dress and slippers, turned the corridor and was stunned when she saw Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan was also stunned. He opened his mouth and didn't know what to say for a moment. Bai Qingqian's eyes were still soft. Li Tianlan didn't even see any blame in her eyes. For the first time in his life, Li Tianlan experienced what it was to be ashamed. In her eyes, which were still tolerant and soft, he lowered his head and wanted to find a place to hide. Bai Qingqian walked over and reached out to touch his head. She said softly, "I know you woke up and came to the hospital. I came out to pick you up." And Li Tianlan's voice was hoarse and muddle-headed. His voice seemed to be squeezed out from his teeth with great difficulty. "I'm sorry. Silly boy." Bai Qingqian grabbed his hair. This strong woman, who had always been strong and could even be said to be ruthless when facing her opponents in the outside world, did not have the slightest bit of it at this time. In Spearhead, Dongqing Rushi was in a coma. Li Tianlan was in a coma. She looked a little haggard after running around in the Prince's Mansion Hospital, but she was still noble and dignified, graceful and generous. What nonsense are you talking about? This was such a choice. In such a situation, who would let anyone down? You didn't betray Rushi, and you didn't betray me. Don't think too much. Li Tianlan shook his head and said nothing. Dongqing Rushi took Li Tianlan's hand and led him to the ward. From childhood to adulthood, because we paid too much attention to this engagement, we may have instilled too many ideas in Rushi. She didn't have any rebellious mentality, but she also attached great importance to this engagement. Tianlan, this is your luck, and also Rushi's luck. You will become husband and wife in the future, and you will be the most intimate person in your life. If I can draw my sword for you, I will be very happy. Men and women were husband and wife. When in danger, the man would stand in front of the woman. It was only right and proper. But since they were husband and wife, why couldn't the woman stand up when the man was temporarily powerless? It was very important for Rushi to step forward this time. I heard about the sword in Eastern Europe. That sword can make you know who Rushi is in your heart, and it can also make Rushi know that you are in her heart. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. Her identity. The door of the ward was pushed open. Bai Qingqian led Li Tianlan in. The layout of the ward was no less than that of a luxury suite, and the room was filled with a faint fragrance. Li Tianlan passed by the living room, stood in front of the door of the bedroom, and pushed open the bedroom door. The strong smell of herbs filled the ward. On the wide bed, the woman who had stood in front of him in Mormons and pulled out silence in the face of the elites of the Devil Troop and the Beihai Corps was lying quietly on the bed. Her body seemed to be lying there without any strength. Her face was pale and she was motionless. She was beautiful and thin. Li Tianlan carefully walked over and held Dongqing Rushi's palm. The slender white hand was soft in his hand at this time, without any strength. Li Tianlan held Dongqing Rushi's cold palm and was silent for a long time. The doctor just checked. The next week is the key. Whether Rushi can survive or not depends on the next week. But the doctor is still very optimistic. Rushi has a strong desire to live, so he should be able to survive. That's not good. Should be able, very optimistic. Feeling the state of Dongqing Rushi's body, Li Tianlan's mouth moved reluctantly. He thought of Qin Weibai's words. It seemed that he had never thought that Dongqing Rushi would die. Now that he thought about it, it turned out that being a vegetable was the most optimistic ending? Vegetable? Vegetable. The Wang family of Beihai. The devil troop. The devil troop, Li Tianlan's heart suddenly twitched. He stared at Dongqing Rushi's face and sniffed. Dongqing Rushi lay there quietly, motionless. Li Tianlan bent down, got close to Dongqing Rushi's ear, and whispered, "I'm fine." In the weak breath that chilled his heart, he gently bit her ear and said softly, "When you wake up, I'll marry you." In a trance, Dongqing Rushi's eyelashes moved. She seemed to move, but also seemed not to move. Li Tianlan didn't look at her, and he was not in the mood to look at her. He straightened up and walked straight out of the ward. Bai Qingqian stood at the door and looked at him, wanting to say something but stopping on second thought. Li Tianlan seemed to have completely calmed down. He smiled and whispered, "Auntie, I'm leaving." "Where do you want to go?" Bai Qingqian asked subconsciously. For some reason, she suddenly felt a little uneasy. Li Tianlan was too quiet, so quiet that she felt a little crazy. "I'm going to see the others." Li Tianlan's voice was extremely calm. "Tianlan." Bai Qingqian looked at Li Tianlan's eyes. "Promise me, don't be impulsive." "Of course." Li Tianlan smiled softly and calmly. "But there are some things that need to be explained." He nodded to Bai Qingqian, walked out of the ward calmly, went out of the corridor at a speed that was almost escaping, and entered the elevator. There was no one in the elevator. Li Tianlan's palm grasped the metal wall of the elevator tightly, and he gasped for breath. His eyes became calmer and calmer, but his 5 fingers pierced through the metal wall of the elevator. "This chapter is not over, please turn the page." 5 dark finger holes were left on the wall. The elevator stopped in the first ward. Li Tianlan walked out of the hall and headed for the second ward. Lin Yuxian, who was also a little pale, hurried over. When he saw Li Tianlan, he breathed a sigh of relief. "I just received a call from my sister saying that you woke up. I guess you will come here. How is it? How is Rushi's situation?" Li Tianlan regained his calmness and looked at Lin Yuxian with a bright smile. He whispered, "The situation is very bad." Lin Yuxian was stunned for a moment. Li Tianlan's smile was so calm, which was completely opposite from the content of his words. The corner of his mouth moved, and he didn't know what to say for a moment. "Let's go." Li Tianlan passed by him. "To see Mr. Lin." Lin Yuxian frowned and followed him subconsciously. The temperature was rising. The breeze in the hospital shook the flowers and plants. Lin Yuxian hesitated for a long time before he whispered, "I was there at that time, but the devil troop rushed too fast, and Jiang Qiansong died instantly. Rushi not only saved you, but also saved me. The Lin clan owes her a favor." He paused and laughed at himself. "No, I owe her a favor." Li Tianlan did not speak. "Tianlan, do you want to go ahead?" Li Tianlan suddenly interrupted him. "What is the most spectacular place in the dark world?" Lin Yuxian was stunned. The most spectacular place in the dark world? He was still thinking, but Li Tianlan had continued. "I heard of a place when I was a child." He said softly, gently, and calmly, "That's the story my grandfather told me. It's a stone platform built on the top of a mountain. In the middle of the stone platform, there is a stone that has faced the sky and the sea for hundreds of years. He said that there are many names engraved on that stone. The romance of the dark world for hundreds of years is almost all on that stone. That should be the most spectacular place in the dark world." Lin Yuxian's face gradually changed. "Have you ever been to Mount Dibbing and the stage of formidable person?" Li Tianlan suddenly asked. Lin Yuxian shook his head subconsciously. He had been to Mount Dibbing when he was a child, but he had never been to the stage of formidable person. It was a forbidden area of the Wang family of Beihai. It was occasionally open to entertain real distinguished guests and big shots. Mount Dibing, the stage of formidable person. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and smiled. I haven't been there either. He walked forward and was silent for a long time. Then he whispered, I want to have a look. It was like a thunder rolling through the clear sky. Lin Yuxian looked at him with a dull face. He seemed to realize that what he said was inappropriate. So Li Tianlan calmly modified his wording. I'm going to have a look. That kind of madness seemed to be venting in the calmest way. It was suppressed, but it was extremely ferocious. It was threatening. Li Tianlan kept moving forward. The noon sun illuminated the clear sky for thousands of miles. The light fell with high temperature and fell on Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan looked up at the sky. Under the sun, his figure was straight, like the sun. End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 6:15. At night in Yuzhou City, the hazy night shrouded the brightly lit city. An extremely depressing atmosphere seemed to be slowly pressing down with the deepening night, and the whole Yuzhou became a little restless. This afternoon and this night, countless eyes were focused on the private hospitals of Prince Yong's mansion and the giant group. The news that Li Tianlan had woken up had spread. Everyone wanted to know what Li Tianlan, who had experienced the chaos in Eastern Europe and played an important role, would do when faced with everything after waking up. When Li Tianlan returned to the prince's mansion, Qin Weibai had already made dinner in person. Several side dishes were relatively light, and the white porridge was just right. Li Tianlan ate and chatted with Qin Weibai as usual, cleaning up the dishes and chopsticks together. The news broadcast in the living room had come to an end. The last news was about the wounded of the Snowdance Corps who would return to China for treatment in the near future. As for Marshal Li Tianlan of the Snowdance Corps and the military merits of the Snowdance Corps, at least for now, the news did not mention a word. Li Tianlan sat on the sofa, lit a cigarette, and watched TV quietly. He held Qin Weibai, who was lazily snuggling up to him, played with her hair, and whispered, "What's going on with Mount Shu?" Qin Weibai was lazy and nasal, like a cat enjoying the warmth in the sun. Wei Kunlun. Li Tianlan looked at Qin Weibai and said, Wei Kunlun had successfully broken through and become a new invincible realm expert in Zhongzhou State. Li Tianlan learned the news almost immediately. What followed was that the new invincible realm expert actually asked his 3 disciples to learn swordsmanship from him. Behind such an incredible move, there was no greater kindness. Li Tianlan communicated with Dongqing Wudi as soon as he heard the news. Dongqing Wudi said that the matter of Mount Shu had nothing to do with him. He also called Li Honghe, who was still in Lin. Li Honghe frankly admitted that he could influence Yun Qinshi, the Phantom Swordmaster, but he was also confused about Wei Kunlun. As for the academics, Li Tianlan was just in a cooperative relationship with them. Even if the academics had a good card like Wei Kunlun in their hands, it was impossible for them to hand it over to him. Moreover, Mount Shu was located in the southwest with thousands of sword energy. In the martial arts and the dark realm in the southwest of Zhongzhou State, it could be called the Unique King. The southwest was the headquarters of the Prince Group. In many cases, Mount Shu, especially Wei Kunlun's branch, had always been regarded as the power of the Prince Group. Now Wei Kunlun's elder brother, Wei Tianhang, was one of the deputy ministers of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou State and the real tycoon of the Prince Group. No one would believe that Mount Shu would become a pawn in the hands of the academics, the sworn enemy of the Prince Group. In this way, Wei Kunlun, whom he had never met, suddenly showed such great kindness to Li Tianlan. Excluding the new invincible realm expert's affection for Li Tianlan, the only driving force behind the scenes was the Samsara Palace. The look in Qin Weibai's eyes was somewhat complicated. He should have already gotten off the plane and is on his way here. When he arrives, let him talk to you. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Li Tianlan took a deep look at him and nodded. Qin Weibai arched into Li Tianlan's arms, as if she wanted him to hold her more comfortably. She was silent for a while and asked carefully, "How is Rushi?" "She's not doing well." Li Tianlan's tone was so ordinary that even he himself felt it incredible. At present, being in a vegetative state is the best result. I had a talk with the experts in the afternoon. In theory, there is a possibility of recovery, but it will take a long time. Being in a vegetative state, Qin Weibai was thinking about the master of Samsara Palace's scheme. After countless replays of the final battle, she was more and more sure of the master of Samsara Palace's plan. From the beginning, the master of Samsara Palace did not pin all her hopes on Li Tianlan staying in Reki City. She hoped that Li Tianlan would stay there. But even if he appeared in Mormons, Dongqing Rushi could still be her bargaining chip. She just didn't know if she would predict Dongqing Rushi's ending, and whether she would feel distressed and guilty. Qin Weibai smiled self-deprecatingly. That woman, maybe she didn't care about anyone or anything at all except Li Tianlan. It will get better. She looked up at him in Li Tianlan's arms and gently touched his face. Do you think I should regret it? Li Tianlan suddenly asked. He thought quietly. Some problems seem to be clear, but I don't seem to understand. For example, when the palace master stabbed me with a sword, if I didn't go to Mormons, Rushi wouldn't be like this now, and it turned out that I really didn't play any role in the final chaos. And if I didn't go, do you regret it? Qin Weibai interrupted him and asked. Li Tianlan was silent for a while. I don't know. He shook his head. Yes, when he almost lost Dongqing Rushi and was stabbed by the master of Samsara Palace, his answer was that he didn't know if he would regret it or not. Under the circumstances at that time, it was impossible for him not to go to Mormons. He had to go. That's it. Qin Weibai said softly, most of the time, no matter whether we change anything or not, the initial attitude is actually the most important. You don't know if you will regret it, but I can be sure that if you don't go to Mormons that night, Zhongzhou State will be disappointed with you, and you will be disappointed with yourself. Li Tianlan smiled bitterly. Maybe. The news broadcast ended. The weather forecast also came to an end. It would rain heavily tomorrow in Beihai Province. Li Tianlan looked at the picture on the TV, narrowed his eyes, and whispered, there are some things that must be explained. Little by, I'm going to Mount Dibbing to have a look at the stage of formidable person. 10 years, within 10 years this chapter is not over. Please turn the page. You can definitely overlook the entire Mount Dibbing. Qin Weibai's voice was resolute. I can't wait for 10 years. Li Tianlan laughed. Qin Weibai was stunned and whispered, within 5 years, there is a chance. When do you want to go? In Beihai Province, the heavy rain would turn into a rainstorm tomorrow. Li Tianlan pointed to the screen and said calmly, tomorrow. Qin Weibai suddenly sat up from Li Tianlan's arms. Because she moved too fast, her forehead hit Li Tianlan's nose, and they both grunted at the same time. Qin Weibai rubbed her forehead with one hand and gently stroked Li Tianlan's nose with the other. Do you know what the stage of formidable person means to the Wang family of Beihai? That's the forbidden area of the Wang family of Beihai. It's the most sacred place in the entire Mount Dibbing, and its status is even higher than Wang Tianzong's bedchamber. Only the big shots who are really recognized by the Wang family of Beihai are lucky enough to climb Mount Dibbing, and they must be recognized by the Wang family of Beihai. From another perspective, only the kind of people who have common and huge interests with the Wang family of Beihai in some cooperation will be recognized by the Wang family of Beihai. In the past 10 years, only 3 people in the world who are not from the Wang family of Beihai are lucky enough to set foot on the stage of formidable person. Do you know who they are? Who are they? Li Tianlan asked softly. His finger pointed at Qin Weibai's white and tender forehead, and he was somewhat careless. One is Li Huaqing, the president of Zhongzhou State. The other is Paul, the patriarch of Rothschild. Qin Weibai said. Who's the third? Li Tianlan glanced at her. Qin Weibai hesitated and whispered, the third is Cold Winter Building, the boss of Zhongzhou State's Flourishing Age Fund. Li Tianlan was stunned. Before he realized what was going on, there was a knock on the door. Come in. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. A tall and plump European woman walked in from the door and said respectfully, Your Highness, boss? Li Tianlan looked at her and was in a trance for a moment. The one who appeared in front of him was Horsewoman, one of the surviving supermasters of Samsara Palace. Qin Weibai straightened up from Li Tianlan's arms and said lightly, "What's wrong?" "Distinguished guests are here." Horsewoman whispered, "Shall we let them in?" Li Tianlan asked. Horsewoman glanced at him quickly. President Li Huaqing and Secretary Wang Qinglei of Wu. Qin Weibai said, "Oh," and did not speak, thinking that the actors were here. Li Tianlan patted Qin Weibai's buttocks casually and said with a chuckle, "Go make a cup of tea and listen to what they have to say." End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 616. In front of the antique, expensive, and luxurious hall, Li Tianlan stood there, watching Li Huaqing and Wang Qinglei coming over, and made a gesture of welcome with a calm expression. However, Li Huaqing, who had just returned to Zhongzhou state from Eastern Europe, looked at that excessively young face and had countless emotions in his heart. He hadn't seen Li Tianlan for only a week. But this week was the week when the new and the old changed. The final day passed, and the chaos came to an end. From the second he woke up, Li Tianlan's status had changed dramatically. Li Huaqing wasn't sure if Li Tianlan was aware of this. But facing this young man again, he was no longer relaxed. Now, this young man, who was only 22 years old, was already qualified to stand at the peak of the whole dark world after the older generation became silent one after another. After gaining the strong support of the giant group, he was now qualified to win anyone's respect. The distance between them was getting closer and closer. Li Tianlan took the initiative to take 2 steps forward unhurriedly. "Mr. President." He took the initiative to salute and shook hands with Li Huaqing. Li Huaqing's expression was gentle and calm. He patted Li Tianlan's palm and said with a smile, "How's your injury? I heard that you were seriously injured and in a coma in Mormons. Not only me, but many comrades, including Qinglei, are very worried. After all, you are the hope to protect Zhongzhou state in the future." "I'm fine now. Some rumors have been exaggerated." Li Tianlan shook his head and glanced at Wang Qinglei. There was only indifference in his expression and eyes. "Secretary Wang." That's good, that's good." Wang Qinglei smiled. This big shot of the Wang family of Beihai. As the leader of the Southeast Group, he had become the most eye-catching political figure in Zhongzhou state in recent years. He was also the key to the delicate atmosphere within the Wang family of Beihai. Everyone knew his goal, and everyone was watching how he would go on. At this time tonight, he followed Li Huaqing to Prince Yang's mansion to visit Li Tianlan, which had already caused countless discussions and speculations. Li Tianlan was also speculating in his heart. But at least on the surface, Wang Qinglei did not reveal the slightest different emotion. His eyes and smile were extremely sincere, filled with gratification and joy, impeccable. Li Tianlan nodded and reached out his hand, saying, "Please." Qin Weibai had already made tea in the living room. Amidst the faint fragrance of tea, she stood up and greeted Li Huaqing with a smile. She was graceful, elegant, quiet, and gentle. The once high and mighty goddess seemed to have become a quiet and well-behaved wife in a trance, and her demeanor became more and more dazzling. Li Huaqing sat on the sofa and sipped his tea, thinking about what to say. Li Tianlan looked at him calmly. In fact, he had always been a person who didn't know much about the ways of the world. Before he entered the human world, the camp in the primeval forest and the prison in the desert did not pay attention to this. After he entered the human world, there was a decisive battle, and there was no need for this kind of 3 years of traveling. The chaos in Eastern Europe was more like a life-and-death plunder and conquest. For the time being, he couldn't learn that kind of deception and hiding a knife in a smile, nor was he interested in it. Therefore, he didn't mind the awkward silence at all. He just looked at Li Huaqing quietly to see what he could say. Here's the thing. There are still many repercussions of what happened in Eastern Europe. Internally, our comrades also have many different opinions, and many people want to hear your attitude. At the beginning of tomorrow, the decision-making committee will hold a plenary meeting. I'm here to invite you to attend tomorrow. This meeting can be regarded as your work report after returning home. How about it? Li Huaqing took the initiative to speak with a smile. Tomorrow? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. What time tomorrow? 8 o'clock in the morning. Li Huaqing glanced at him. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. He laughed and said, Why? Tianlan, do you have other things to do tomorrow? It will take the Snowdance Corps 2 days to withdraw from Eastern Europe. I can do it in the morning. Li Tianlan glanced at Wang Qinglei calmly and said lightly, It's just that I experienced something in Eastern Europe. There are some things that I want an explanation for. He looked into Wang Qinglei's eyes and said calmly, Secretary Wang, I want to go to the stage of formidable person to have a look. What do you think? The stage of formidable person. Even Li Huaqing's face couldn't help changing when he heard this. Wang Qinglei raised his head in astonishment and looked at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan's eyes were calm and serious. The smile on Wang Qinglei's face disappeared little by little. He seemed to feel a little ridiculous, and his tone was full of absurdity and strange sarcasm. Do you want to go to the stage of formidable person? More than that. Li Tianlan said, I want to go. I'm sorry. Wang Qinglei's eyes seemed to become cold for a moment. The stage of formidable person is a forbidden place in Beihai province. It is not a place that can welcome your highness's victory. I can make the decision on this matter, and I can tell you clearly that your highness is not welcome at the stage of formidable person. I heard that. Li Tianlan nodded. He stood up and looked at Wang Qinglei condescendingly. But you seem to have forgotten a problem. His tone was gentle and calm. Do you think anyone can stop me now where I want to go? Tianlan. Li Huaqing frowned. Wang Qinglei took a deep look at him. He said softly, I know there are many misunderstandings between the Wang family of Beihai and your highness, but many things can be solved. Everyone is in Zhongzhou state. At this time, the situation is delicate. I hope your highness can focus on the overall situation. Don't. He had not finished his words. Li Tianlan suddenly stretched out his hand. The entire space of the mansion shook as he stretched out his hand. Wang Qinglei's body flew up directly and fell into Li Tianlan's hand. Li Tianlan grabbed his neck tightly and lifted him up. In an instant, his eyes were gloomy and scarlet, as if he had completely lost his mind. Focus on the overall situation. His voice was as cold as the chilly wind blowing from the abyss of hell, tyrannical and presumptuous. When the devil troop united with Rothschild to kill me, why didn't anyone say that? When Wang Tianzong sent the devil troop to attack the manor, why didn't anyone say that? If the Wang family of Beihai could really focus on the overall situation, would my fiancé be lying in the hospital now? Now I'm still alive, and I want to go to the stage of formidable person. You tell me to focus on the overall situation? Wang Qinglei. You tell me, what is the overall situation? Bang! The fist with great power directly hit Wang Qinglei's abdomen. The overall situation you mentioned? Whose overall situation are you talking about? Wang Qinglei spat out blood, and his body slid along the floor for nearly 20 meters. The ferocious and tyrannical killing intent swept through the hall. Li Tianlan took a step forward. Behind him, Qin Weibai's arms came over and hugged him tightly. Li Huaqing's serious and somewhat gloomy face appeared in front of him. Tianlan, do you know what you're doing? Li Tianlan took a deep look at him. The killing intent was disappearing. All the emotions were suppressed in his heart in an instant. Of course. He laughed. Sorry, I was a little emotional just now. But since Secretary Wang is a person who cares about the overall situation, I guess you won't mind what just happened, right? He tilted his head and looked at Wang Qinglei, who was struggling to get up from the ground. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. He said with no expression, Secretary Wang, the overall situation is the most important thing. Li Huaqing glared at Li Tianlan, but he was obviously not really angry. In the rapid footsteps, the tall and plump figure of horsewoman appeared at the door again. Your Highness. She glanced at the situation in the living room and said calmly, Mr. Wei Kunlun, the Nirvana Sword Master of Mount Shu, is here to visit. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes. Both Li Huaqing and Wang Qinglei were slightly stunned. It was no secret that Wei Kunlun, the new invincible realm expert of Zhongzhou State, wanted his 3 personal disciples, who he valued very much, to learn swordsmanship from Li Tianlan. But no one thought that Wei Kunlun would come so soon. Li Tianlan thought about it, looked at Li Huaqing, nodded and said, "Mr. President, excuse me." Li Huaqing nodded, looked at Li Tianlan's back, and then looked at Wang Qinglei, whose face was pale. The two followed Li Tianlan out at the same time. Li Tianlan walked quickly through the mansion. When he approached the gate of the mansion, Wei Kunlun had already walked in with 3 disciples. This was the first time that Li Tianlan had seen the famous Nirvana sword master in Zhongzhou State. He used to be one of the strongest superiors of the half-step invincible realm in the Dark World, but he had always been outside the general trend. He was not in the final battle of Heaven Capital, nor in the chaos of Eastern Europe. Even in the past 3 years, when the Dark World was full of flames of war, the sword energy of Mount Shu had never left the southwest. Everyone thought that he was in closed-door training to find a way to break through the invincible realm. But no one expected that after he entered the invincible realm, the first thing he did was to visit Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan looked at Wei Kunlun in front of him seriously. Wei Kunlun was not old, between young and middle-aged, about 40 years old. His appearance and figure were not very outstanding, but his every move, subtle but vivid sword energy could be said to be everywhere. Li Tianlan frowned. He instinctively felt that the other party's sword energy was a little familiar, but he didn't know where he had felt it. "Your Highness, you have heard about my purpose of coming here. My 3 useless disciples, if your Highness works hard, they may be able to take charge in the future. We are all acquaintances, so I don't have to beat around the bush. Let my 3 disciples join the East Emperor Palace and learn swordsmanship from your Highness. How about that?" Li Tianlan glanced at the 3 people behind Wei Kunlun. 2 men and 1 woman. The female disciple was naturally Yi Huayu, the only one Li Tianlan was familiar with. As for the other 2, he had never seen them before. 3 people joined the East Emperor Palace? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows, a little surprised. "Your Highness, do you think it's too little?" Wei Kunlun laughed loudly and said calmly and gently, from now on, the entire Mount Shu will join the East Emperor Palace. What do you think, Your Highness?" He paused, looked at Li Tianlan, and said with a smile, "Including me." Li Tianlan's heart suddenly jumped. This pie fell from the sky so suddenly that he was a little vigilant. He gradually raised his eyebrows, looked at Wei Kunlun and said calmly, "Your Highness, what do you mean?" "It's boring." Wei Kunlun looked at Li Tianlan. "We are on the same side." He stood in front of Li Tianlan and bowed slightly. His voice with sword energy instantly shrouded the whole mansion, clear as thunder. Wei Kunlun, the saint of the Samsara Palace, Wei Kunlun, the saint, Wei Kunlun, Kunlun. In the incessant voice, he lowered his body and said calmly, "Greetings, Your Highness." End of this chapter. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 617. Samsara Palace, Saint, Mount Shu, Nirvana Swordmaster. Wei Kunlun. This was the calmest attitude, enough to dispel everyone's doubts and speculations. Such a calm attitude was also like the most surging wave, fiercely washing the minds of countless people in Yuzhou. Saint was Wei Kunlun. In other words, from the moment Saint first appeared in the Dark World, Mount Shu had already belonged to the Samsara Palace, and it was even the most important part of the Samsara Palace. Among the countless elites of the Samsara Palace, there might be swordsmen from Mount Shu. Everyone thought that Wei Kunlun imprisoned himself in Mount Shu in order to break through the invincible realm, but the truth was extremely ironic. Mount Shu had never been silent. The swords of Mount Shu had always been active in the highest place of the Dark World, but in another identity. With the official demise of Samsara Palace, a large number of secrets did not disappear completely. Instead, they were being revealed bit by bit under the sky of the new era. Wei Kunlun. Who could have thought of this? Who could have thought of the consequences when Mount Shu stood firmly behind Li Tianlan? Wang Qinglei, who followed Li Tianlan out, stiffened for a moment. The corners of his mouth twitched, and he laughed at himself. In the past many years, with the collapse of the Li family, the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City had been firmly controlling the dark realm of Zhongzhou State, not allowing any dark force to take root in Zhongzhou State. What was the result? Mount Shu had always been a force of Samsara Palace. And in the vast Zhongzhou State, in addition to Mount Shu, who were the other forces of Samsara Palace? There was Li Honghao and Lin. The old fox, who was best at planning and liked to set up the overall situation, had been quietly hiding in Zhongzhou State for more than 20 years. What tricks did he have? Wang Qinglei took a deep breath. Somehow, there seemed to be an unstoppable force rising, unstoppable. Li Tianlan helped Wei Kunlun up. Amidst the shock, the #1 expert of Shushan was calm as usual. There was a smile in his eyes, and there was even a tinge of gratitude that could not be detected. From today on, I am Saint, and also Wei Kunlun. If your highness needs anything, just tell me. Mount Shu will do its best. Wei Kunlun's voice was calm and powerful. So it's you. The look in Li Tianlan's eyes was complicated. The combination of Saint and Wei Kunlun made him feel that everything was extremely illusory. Did you reveal your identity at this time because you broke through the invincible realm? It's the palace master's will. Wei Kunlun said, it's also the palace master's idea that Mount Shu joins the East Emperor Palace. Li Tianlan was silent for a while and said calmly, but the palace master left. Yeah, let's go. Wei Kunlun looked at Li Tianlan quietly, and a different emotion flashed through his eyes. Li Tianlan shook his head hard, reached out and said, let's talk inside. In the direction he pointed, Li Huaqing and Wang Qinglei slowly walked over. Mr. President? Wei Kunlun raised his eyebrows and glanced at Wang Qinglei. He asked in confusion, what are you guys doing? It's nothing. Li Huaqing smiled and shook hands with Wei Kunlun. Tianlan just woke up. I came to see him on behalf of my comrades. Since there's nothing else, I should go back. He looked at Li Tianlan and said, there's a meeting tomorrow morning. Someone will send the contents of the meeting over later. Don't be late. Li Tianlan nodded and said yes. Li Huaqing walked to the door. Wang Qinglei followed behind. He hesitated for a moment, then turned around. Li Tianlan looked at him with gloomy eyes. It had only been a few minutes since the conflict between the two, but Li Tianlan had Mount Shu. Obviously, he had a different power from before. He wanted to hear what Wang Qinglei would say. Still the same sentence. Wang Qinglei's voice was a little hoarse and weak. Your Highness, please focus on the overall situation. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and said expressionlessly, get out. Wang Qinglei raised his head and took a deep look at him. Then he slowly turned around and left. With his identity, he was humiliated. Instead of exploding, an inexplicable joy and smile flashed in his eyes at the moment he turned around. Li Tianlan looked at his back and didn't speak for a long time. Wei Kunlun stood beside him and watched all this. After a long time, he whispered, Your Highness, Mr. President's attitude needs to be carefully considered. It's a cooperation to begin with. How can there be so much intimacy? Li Tianlan said quietly. You saw it? Wei Kunlun glanced at him. It's a good show. Li Tianlan shook his head and turned to walk toward his residence. Wang Qinglei performed well, but I didn't do anything when I punched him. Wei Kunlun laughed in a low voice. He didn't worry that Li Tianlan couldn't figure it out. It would be a problem sooner or later. However, Li Tianlan's current attitude clearly showed that he was very clear-headed and didn't get carried away by what happened to Dongqing Rushi. He's provoking me. Li Tianlan said blandly, the person who doesn't know the overall situation wants me to focus on the overall situation. He just wants me to break the current situation. I'll go to the stage of formidable person. Today, he said that I should focus on the overall situation, which almost blocked my way out. Of course, I don't need any way out. In the current situation, I can go wherever I want. Wang Qinglei is also a person who doesn't care about the overall situation and stability. Wei Kunlun made a simple comment. Li Tianlan didn't speak. He couldn't determine Wang Tianzong's current specific state. But he could be sure that under the eternal sword light, even if Wang Tianzong had immortality, he would certainly not be better. He didn't die, and Li Guangtu didn't die, which also showed this. Such a situation was rare for Wang Qinglei. He wanted to seize power and control the Wang family of Beihai. In the case of Wang Tianzong's serious injury, the best way was to suppress his prestige and influence in the Wang family of Beihai. At present, nothing could suppress Wang Tianzong's prestige more than Li Tianlan stepping on the stage of formidable person. So Wang Qinglei said that he should focus on the overall situation, which was completely to provoke him to go to Mount Dibbing. Li Tianlan didn't care about all this. Whether Wang Qinglei appeared or not tonight, it wouldn't affect his decision. Through the thousands of lights in Yuzhou, he couldn't see Beihai or the mountain in Beihai. But he would go there. He must go there. In the most above-board way. However, although this person doesn't care about the overall situation, his means have always been very clever. Your Highness, if you want to go to Mount Dibbing, how about I go with you? Wei Kunlun continued. No need. Li Tianlan shook his head. They're just a group of clowns. The chaos in Eastern Europe, the eternal sword, Wang Tianzong. It seems that these things still can't make them understand a truth. Wei Kunlun looked at Li Tianlan. What truth? The real power can fight against the whole world alone with one sword. Li Tianlan said. His voice was very light, but with a kind of vague spirit that could look down on the world. Wei Kunlun was silent for a while and looked at the three disciples behind him. They can learn swordsmanship from your Highness. It may be the honor of the whole Mount Shu in the future. Li Tianlan turned to look at Wei Kunlun. Your Highness, do you really want to join the East Emperor Palace? He asked very seriously. I'm not your Highness. Wei Kunlun said with a smile, you are. As for the name of the East Emperor Palace, your Highness should consider changing it. Li Tianlan said yes. Chapter 6:18. It was already September in Yuzhou. The early morning sun was already tinged with the hint of autumn. The maple leaves in the Hidden Dragon Sea gradually changed color. The car passed through the clean and tidy road in the Hidden Dragon Sea. Li Tianlan looked at the sky outside the window, his eyes as deep as endless clouds. This was not his first time coming to the Hidden Dragon Sea. However, this was his first time attending a meeting in the Hidden Dragon Sea. There was no Dongqing Wudi, no Wei Kunlun, no one around him. It had been almost 4 years since he had entered the world, and he alone was qualified to step into that meeting room. The car moved forward slowly. The morning breeze blew past, and the surface of the hidden ocean rippled. Last night, the contents of the meeting had been formed into a document and transmitted to Prince Yong's mansion, as well as the hands of every member of parliament. In fact, the work direction of Zhongzhou State in September had been determined at yesterday's meeting. Today's meeting, strictly speaking, was only about one thing, summarizing Zhongzhou State's gains and losses in Eastern Europe this time. Li Tianlan casually flipped through the information in his hand, thinking about the rumors that were not really rumors, and was lost in thought. Your Highness, we've arrived. The young but calm driver stopped the car and reminded them. Li Tianlan looked up. In his line of sight was an ancient-looking but extremely dignified hall. The national emblem and the red star flag fluttered solemnly in the wind. Li Tianlan looked at this scene with a strange look in his eyes. At this moment, no one knew what he was thinking. People were coming and going in front of the main hall. Members of parliament who held great power in Zhongzhou State appeared here one after another. The secretary and the chauffeur were busy. Sitting in the car, Li Tianlan smoked a cigarette and casually threw the butt out. Patting the driver's seat, he whispered, "Go back. Don't wait for me. I'll go back myself." The driver hesitated for a moment, nodded, reversed the car, and left the Hidden Dragon Sea. Li Tianlan stood under a maple tree and looked at the blue sky above his head. The warm autumn sun cast spots of light on the treetops. The light and shadows fell on him, making him look like a statue. Li Tianlan looked at it and was silent for a long time. "What is your Highness thinking about?" A warm and indifferent voice suddenly sounded. Li Tianlan turned his head and took a look. In his line of sight, a middle-aged man wearing the same military uniform as him with the rank of a marshal was standing beside him, smiling calmly. Deputy Minister of the Army Headquarters of Zhongzhou State, Chief of the General Staff. Zhongzhou God of Army Yi Dongxing. General Yi. Li Tianlan smiled and reached out to shake hands with him naturally. He still remembered that it was this god of army of Zhongzhou State who appeared in the Li family's camp. The year he left, he also set foot on the road to Huading. Expectant. Yi Dongxing's eyes flashed. He held Li Tianlan's hand tightly. I'm thinking. He patted Yi Dongxing's shoulder with the other hand and pointed to the sky. Look at the sky, isn't it different from before? The corner of Yi Dongxing's eyes twitched. He narrowed his eyes and said calmly, Your Highness seems to be implying something? Li Tianlan handed Yi Dongxing a cigarette with a smile and said softly, I'm just saying that today is a good day. It really is a good day. Yi Dongxing took the cigarette and smiled, Your Highness, please. Li Tianlan shook his head. I'm waiting for someone. After you, Marshal Yi. Yi Dongxing nodded and looked at him deeply. Alright, see you later. Li Tianlan replied with a hum. In his sight, a black Audi with a northeast license plate slowly drove over. Li Tianlan casually waved his hand and motioned for the driver to stop. The car stopped in front of Li Tianlan. The door of the back row opened, and a beautiful woman with a graceful appearance but a sharp and dangerous aura got out. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. In the car, she looked at Li Tianlan in surprise. Young Governor Thu. Li Tianlan looked at her and thought for a while. Deep Dream? Deep Dream nodded and smiled. Long time no see. I thought you forgot me. How come? Li Tianlan looked at the back row of the car, and then looked at the top assassin of Sai City who had fought with him 3 years ago. What are you doing? Governor, it's not convenient for you to act now. The minister is unconscious. Only I came to attend the meeting on behalf of the Northeast Special Warfare Headquarters. Governor said that this meeting is very important to you. She originally wanted to come in person, but her injury recurred, so Deep Dream wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Governor, how is your injury? Li Tianlan asked subconsciously. After that, he had a video call with Situ Tsongyue, and he also saw Tribulation, who was accidentally rescued from Eastern Europe by General Nan, the deputy commander of the Navy of Zhongzhou State. Tribulation's injury was extremely serious. His foundation was completely destroyed, and he was still in a coma. Naturally, the Vatican had to take responsibility for this. Situ Tsongyue's injury was also not optimistic, and it even threatened her future combat capability. The chaos in Eastern Europe was too fierce. The Invincible Realm experts were either killed or injured. Those who survived by chance were destined to need a long time to recover. It's not very optimistic. She needs to recuperate. According to our deduction, for at least a few years, she can't even have intense exercise, let alone fight. Deep Dream shook her head and said apologetically, That's why I'm here this time. But I'm neither the governor nor the minister. I only have the right to speak at today's meeting. I don't think I can help you much. Li Tianlan looked at her in silence and whispered, Go back. Deep Dream looked at Li Tianlan and seemed to be unable to react. You're wrong. Governor, you're wrong too. Li Tianlan whispered. He turned to look at the door of the conference room, where people were coming and going, and chuckled. I don't need any help now, so go back. But Deep Dream wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. No buts. Li Tianlan waved his hand and said in an unquestionable tone, But it's rare for you to come to Zhou. You can go to Prince Yang's mansion first. Little Bai and His Highness Wei Kunlun are both there. If you have any bottlenecks in martial arts, you can learn from the swordsmanship of Mount Shu. Go back. This is an order. Deep Dream bit her lip and whispered, Today's meeting, I know. Li Tianlan said lightly, I know what some people want to say, but I'm not here to attend the meeting today. He pushed Deep Dream into the car, closed the door, and said to the driver, Go back to Prince Yang's mansion. He glanced at Deep Dream and said, In a few days, everything will be explained. The Audi was slowly turning around. Li Tianlan watched it quietly. That day was the first time he came to the Hidden Dragon Sea to attend the high-level meeting of the decision-making committee. He transferred the driver away and sent Deep Dream away. He also stopped Wei Kunlun, the new invincible realm expert of Zhongzhou State and the minister of the Southwest Special Warfare Headquarters, who wanted to attend the meeting with him today. Today, he was alone. Looking at the conference room in front of him, he stamped out the cigarette butt and walked over slowly. Tianlan. No, now I should call you Marshal Li or Your Highness. Ha. An old but vigorous voice sounded in front of the conference room door, sounding extremely hearty. Wu Jingmin, the Deputy Prime Minister of Zhongzhou State, walked down the steps in person. Li Tianlan hurriedly took a few steps forward, held Wu Jingmin's warm palm, and said with a wry smile, "Grandpa Wu, you still call me Tianlan, which makes me feel comfortable." Li Tianlan had nothing but respect for Wu Jingmin, who had defended Jiangzhou with unparalleled political wisdom despite the collapse of the Li family for many years. Wu Jingmin laughed and patted Li Tianlan on the shoulder. "Tianlan, you're good. You're very good. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page." Li Tianlan shook his head with a wry smile. Wu Jingmin had already waved in another direction. "White, Mulin, what are you doing there? Come and have a chat." His voice was loud and clear, and he was full of energy. He talked and laughed cheerfully and freely. Many people nearby looked over, whether intentionally or unintentionally. On the other side, Bai Zhanfang, who could almost be called the local emperor in Yuzhou, shook his head and walked over. Zhou Mulin, the real magnate of Zhongzhou State, also wanted to come over, but the secretary walked over and said something in his ear. He smiled and cupped his hands to this side, nodded to Li Tianlan, and walked in another direction. "Old guy, what are you shouting for? I heard your loud voice as soon as I came. It's outrageous." Bai Zhanfang came over and said in a helpless tone. Wu Jingmin snorted coldly and said indifferently, "Some people are just outrageous. Making a racket? I've already given him face by not slapping him in the face. What's he doing by taking advantage of his seniority?" "Taking advantage of your seniority?" Bai Zhanfang glanced at him with a faint smile. Wu Jingmin froze for a moment and chuckled. Indeed, among all the people in the senior management of Zhongzhou State, he and Bai Zhanfang were the oldest. One was the first, and the other was the second. "I'm not talking about us. That old guy is a few years older than us." Wu Jingmin said, "The Southeast has brought up that old guy to target Tianlan. White, you must show your attitude today." Bai Zhanfang glanced at Li Tianlan, nodded, and was about to speak. Li Tianlan suddenly said, "Against me?" Bai Zhanfang nodded and said, "There are several old comrades present at this meeting. They are all veterans. Because they have retired, they have no scruples about what they say and what they do. The Southeast invited an old guy to come out in order to target your achievements in Eastern Europe and suppress your credit. But don't worry, old Wu and I can handle it. I'm not worried." Li Tianlan smiled and said softly, "I'm ready to face everything since I can stand here today." "Grandpa Wu, Grandpa Bai." He looked at the two old men in front of him and said, "Thank you for today, but no need." His gaze was firm and indifferent. "Today, this is my battlefield. You just have to watch. In fact, I have been thinking about this day for many years. The Li family fell from here. Today, I will lift the Li family up again. By yourself." Bai Zhanfang raised his eyebrows, and his eyes were complicated. "By myself." Li Tianlan nodded. "Enough." He nodded to the two old men and walked to the door of the conference room. "Are you Li Tianlan?" An old but extremely sharp voice suddenly sounded in Li Tianlan's ear. Li Tianlan turned his head and raised his eyebrows. In his sight was an extremely thin old man, dressed in an old Chinese tunic suit and holding a cane. He was almost skinny, but his eyes were extremely sharp as a knife. Li Tianlan nodded and said gently, "I am." The old man snorted coldly. "I really don't know what Comrade Hua Cheng is thinking. Does a young boy deserve to attend the high-level meeting of Zhongzhou State? It's nonsense. The old man raised his cane and almost pointed it at Li Tianlan's face. Look at you. Ask yourself, do you deserve the rank of marshal? Do you deserve it? The old man's voice was sharp and loud. In an instant, almost everyone's eyes were focused on him and Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan smiled softly, still gentle and calm. But in this calmness, Bai Zhanfang and Wu Jingmin clearly saw the fighting spirit and madness in his eyes. Who can tell me? Li Tianlan looked around and smiled slowly. He pointed at the old man in front of him and asked, "What is this old man?" End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 619. An unprecedented atmosphere pervaded in front of the conference room. Li Tianlan's voice was very light and gentle, but his voice fell clearly in everyone's ears. It sounded elegant, but extremely ferocious. "Old bastard." What was it? In the solemn hidden dragon sea, it was not uncommon for giants to argue or even quarrel. But such sharp words still stimulated the nerves of all high-level officials in Zhongzhou State. Many people couldn't even remember how many years it had been since they heard such words. The old man's face suddenly turned red, and a pair of eyeballs in his shriveled eye sockets almost popped out, looking extremely ferocious. The crutch in his hand was still pointed at Li Tianlan, and his voice was grumpy. "Say it again?" Li Tianlan didn't even look at him. There was a faint smile on his calm face, but the madness was burning in his heart like a wildfire. The dangerous temperature filled the conference room of Hidden Dragon Sea, almost everywhere. Many people had seen Li Tianlan. However, not many people understood him. But even so, at this moment, seeing Li Tianlan smile, everyone still felt a strong sense of alienation. They didn't know this young man who might be on an equal footing with them after today. But they were keenly aware that he was different from before. He was completely different. "Is no one going to introduce me?" Li Tianlan's voice was with a smile. "Ain't nobody offended the marshal of Zhongzhou State. Do you really think that I dare not kill you?" A subtle sword intent suddenly appeared at the front of the crutch. The wooden crutch suddenly shattered. The sword energy condensed. Before it was about to envelop the old man, a hand gently supported the old man and took him a step back. Bang! In the dull sound, the floor where the old man had been standing was completely shattered. The invisible sword energy spread to the left and right for nearly 20 meters at a moderate speed, all the way to the conference room. The expensive floor was broken and looked very ugly. Everyone was stunned. The fastest computer / no one thought that Li Tianlan would really do it. There was no doubt that if the old man had stepped back a second later, his body would have been cut into countless pieces by this sword intent. Since the founding of Zhongzhou State, this place might have been stained with blood, but no one died. This was something that had never happened before. Everyone was looking at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan's expression was calm and lazy, and the faint smile on his face became more and more indifferent. But behind the indifference, the trace of madness began to become more and more obvious. "Your Highness, why are you so angry?" Yi Dongsheng stood beside the old man and looked at Li Tianlan. There was no helplessness on his face, no wry smile, no anger, only seriousness. Most of the time, seriousness meant fear. In terms of force, he was no match for Li Tianlan. But that didn't mean Yi Dongsheng was afraid of him. But now, standing in front of Li Tianlan, Yi Dongsheng really felt the danger. Li Tianlan was as calm as a madman. Li Tianlan stared at Yi Dongsheng quietly. After a long time, he touched his nose and smiled. "Marshal Yi, can you introduce me?" "This is my teacher," Yi Dongsheng said seriously, "Old Marshal Tang Wanson of Zhongzhou State." Li Tianlan tilted his head, looked at the old man, and said, "Oh." He was no stranger to the name Tang Wanson. The Tang family was originally a big family in Yuzhou. Although it was not as good as the Bai family, it was an important part of the Southeast group in building the network of Yuzhou. Tang Wanson was a member of Zhongzhou State more than 20 years ago and the deputy minister of the army headquarters. His position was roughly the same as Yi Dongsheng's today. He had a hot temper and even contradicted Li Honghe in public. That was when the Li family and the Wang family of Beihai were close. In his era, he could indeed be regarded as a big shot whose words carried weight. Li Tianlan smiled. An old guy who has retired for more than a decade, where on earth does he get the courage to question whether I deserve the rank of marshal? His eyes moved from Tang Wansen to Yi Dongxing. I'll keep this in mind. At that moment, countless surging malice and killing intent in the air hit Yi Dongxing in the face without disguise. Yi Dongxing could hardly breathe. Li Tianlan turned around and nodded to several members of parliament beside him, then walked into the conference room. There were also members of parliament chatting in the conference room. Member Zhong Yongming of Huading was whispering something to a deputy prime minister of the cabinet. When he saw Li Tianlan come in, he narrowed his eyes and looked a little cold. It had been several years since the incident, but he still remembered the miserable appearance of his son when he died in the hospital. Li Tianlan glanced at him casually, found a corner to sit down, and did not speak. Bai Zhanfang and Wu Jingmin walked in. The two glanced at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan shook his head, and his eyes were firm. The two old men who had been truly all-powerful in Zhongzhou state all their lives sat down side by side without batting an eyelid. More and more people walked into the conference room. The secretary came in and filled the cups of tea for the members of parliament present. A sweet-looking female secretary, less than 30 years old, had been looking at Li Tianlan curiously. She did not come to her senses until the tea overflowed and flowed out of the teacup. She was slightly shocked and was about to apologize in a panic, but Li Tianlan's palm had quietly brushed over the table. Update fastest mobile. // the flowing tea froze, the sparks flashed for a moment, and everything disappeared without a trace. Li Tianlan smiled and waved at the secretary, then casually glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. President Li Huaqing of Zhongzhou State walked into the conference room. Everyone got up at the same time. Li Huaqing walked to the center and sat down. He nodded and said, "Everyone, sit down." Li Tianlan sat down silently, looked at the empty seat opposite Li Huaqing and remained silent. Li Huaqing picked up the teacup, took a sip of tea, and waved his hand to signal the secretary to leave. After everyone went out, he put down the teacup and said calmly, "Everyone has seen the agenda of the meeting in advance. The chaos in Eastern Europe seems to be over, but in fact, there is only less war. The general trend has been settled, but it has not been completely calmed down. Snow Country, the 5 countries in Eastern Europe, there are many things to deal with. If you have any ideas, you can speak freely." The conference room was quiet for a moment. Li Tianlan silently picked up the teacup. Li Huaqing looked at everyone's expression in his sight. He waited for a while, and seeing that no one spoke, he took the initiative to say, "Tianlan, how is the situation in the 5 countries in Eastern Europe?" "Everything is under control." Li Tianlan put down the teacup. Everyone's eyes were focused on him. 22 years old. Sitting in the conference room of the power center of Zhongzhou State for the first time, he was extremely calm. At present, the interest groups in Eastern Europe have an urgent desire to cooperate with Zhongzhou State. After the agreement with Wulan State is signed, I will urge Wulan State to fulfill the agreement as soon as possible. At present, time is relatively short, and I haven't mastered all the details for the time being. When Wulan State sorts out the detailed information, I will report to Mr. President alone. Li Huaqing nodded and said, Marshal Li, since you haven't mastered all the details, why do you say that everything is under control?" A voice suddenly sounded, gentle and tough. Not far from Li Tianlan, a gray-haired old man turned his head and looked at Li Tianlan with his bright and piercing eyes with great pressure. "Are you really sure that everything in the 5 countries in Eastern Europe is under your control?" No one spoke. Unlike Tang Wansen, although this old comrade in front of him was also a retired old comrade, his words and deeds carried absolute weight. Marshal Qi Baitsong, the former executive minister of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou State. This was the top leader of the Special Warfare Group. In the world where he had just retired for more than 2 years, Dongqing Wudi had not completely eliminated his influence in the army headquarters. Qi Baitsong. Tang Wansen. There was also Lu Yu, another former military big shot in Zhongzhou State. These three came from the Southeast Group, the Special Warfare Group, and the Prince Group respectively. They were also the three old comrades invited to the meeting today. From this alone, it could be seen that the academics were weak in the military and special warfare fields. Today, when discussing the situation of the Dark World in Eastern Europe, the academics could not choose any old comrades who could speak. Li Tianlan quietly glanced at Qi Beizong. He reached out and tapped on the table. I'm sure. At present, although I can't grasp the details of the 5 countries in Eastern Europe, there will be no variables on a large scale. I can control the 5 countries in Eastern Europe, especially Wulan State. As long as I can control Prime Minister Rieker, that's enough. His voice was indifferent and confident. Prime Minister Rieker? Li Huaqing sighed softly. During my visit to Wulan State this time, Prime Minister Rieker's ruling ideas are very friendly and sincere to Zhongzhou State. Li Tianlan glanced at him and said nothing. Li Huaqing was equivalent to guaranteeing for him and confirming that he could control Rieker. From the moment he came in, Li Tianlan noticed that although Li Huaqing was full of smiles, the look deep in his eyes was a little gloomy. The time for the rise of the academics was too short. If they wanted to break out and officially enter the ranks of the top groups in Zhongzhou State, it depended on Li Huaqing's achievements in the next few years. The chaos in Eastern Europe was such a big cake, and Snow Country's position was unclear. The academics could only put their hopes on the 5 countries in Eastern Europe. How much they could get depended on Li Tianlan's attitude. So even if Li Tianlan's relationship with the academics was subtle after he entered the giant group, at least in a short time, the two sides were still in a honeymoon period. Qi Beizong glanced at Li Huaqing, picked up the teacup, took a sip of tea, and stopped talking. Tianlan, you represent Zhongzhou State in Eastern Europe this time. Comrades don't know as much as you do. If you have any ideas, just say them. We can discuss them together. In the absence of Dongqing Wudi, Zhou Mulin, the only giant of the giant group, said this calmly. Li Tianlan's eyes flickered, and he quietly glanced at everyone in the conference room. The giants and members of parliament in the conference room were also looking at him. There was appreciation, playfulness, mockery, and malice in their eyes. Li Tianlan smiled. The wildfire hidden in his heart was gradually ignited. I do have an idea. Li Tianlan looked at Li Huaqing calmly. Li Huaqing nodded and kept his smile. Mr. President, comrades, in this chaos in Eastern Europe, the bravery of the Snowdance Corps is obvious to all, and the Snowdance Corps is also the cornerstone of stabilizing the 5 countries in Eastern Europe. However, in the chaos, the Snowdance Corps also suffered heavy losses. I suggest that the Snowdance Corps expand its establishment and set up a large corps of about 100,000 people in Eastern Europe. It will help the Arctic Ocean Command and completely stabilize the whole of Eastern Europe. In the stunned eyes of countless people, Li Tianlan looked calm. I have had a preliminary communication with Minister Dongqing on this matter. The minister agreed with my proposal in principle and came up with a preliminary plan for the expansion of the Snowdance Corps. The new Snowdance Corps will have about 100,000 people. It will draw elites from the Air Force, the Navy, and the Border Control Corps to form a large comprehensive corps. In the long run, the new Snowdance Corps will inevitably play a vital role in the stability of Eastern Europe. Everyone was stunned. Even Li Huaqing looked at Li Tianlan and did not speak for a long time. Before today, countless people in the Prince Group, the Special Warfare Group, and the Southeast Group were discussing the complete cancellation of the establishment of the Snowdance Corps. The first step was to withdraw the wounded of the Snowdance Corps from Eastern Europe. It seemed to be a very natural test. Moreover, with the 3 groups joining hands, the academics could not completely fall out with the 3 groups. The giant group could not withstand this result at all. In this way, the 3 groups could justifiably remove Li Tianlan from the position of marshal. But now, why did it become the expansion of the Snowdance Corps when Li Tianlan came? Or a super-large comprehensive corps of 100,000 people? This was a blatant seizure of power. Everyone's inner thoughts were constantly changing. Now the key was that Li Tianlan could not know the idea of the three groups to cancel the establishment of the Snowdance Corps. Then where did he get the courage to expand the Snowdance Corps? Was he asking to be humiliated? Countless people's thoughts fluctuated. But the madness was not over. Li Tianlan knocked on the table and continued calmly. In addition, the minister and I believe that the Snowdance Corps and the Arctic Ocean Command with 100,000 people are enough to deter the whole of Eastern Europe. So such a force does not have to be gathered in the 5 countries of Eastern Europe. In the future, most of the new Snowdance Corps will be stationed in Snow Country to deter it. Boom! In an uproar, countless people raised their heads and looked at Li Tianlan in astonishment. Don't bother Marshal Li. In an indifferent and angry voice, Councillor Wen Xiyuan of the Beihai province said indifferently, the Beihai Corps is currently negotiating with Snow Country, and there has been a very good result so far. I didn't stop you from negotiating with Snow Country. Li Tianlan looked into his eyes and said, you can talk freely, but after the negotiation, the results of the negotiation will be taken over by the Snowdance Corps. He leaned forward and looked into Wen Xiyuan's eyes. Don't you understand what I said? What a bastard! In the furious voice, Tang Wansen, who had been silent, suddenly stood up. Comrades, this is a blatant seizure of power. The Snowdance Corps is a special warfare battalion. How can it expand to 100,000 people? It's completely nonsense. This has violated the original intention of the establishment of the Snowdance Corps. How can a special warfare battalion take over the negotiation results of the Beihai Corps? Li Tianlan, do you really want to have troops in Eastern Europe? There was a moment of silence in the conference room. Countless voices rang out. It's true. I think it's appropriate for Beihai to guard Snow Country. Marshal Li has not thought it through. There's no need for the Snowdance Corps to expand. As a special warfare battalion, it's better for the Snowdance Corps to return home. In the countless voices, Li Huaqing's face darkened for a moment and he did not speak. A smile flashed in Tang Wansen's eyes, and he continued, and I personally think that the Snowdance Corps has suffered heavy losses this time and should return home to recuperate. The Beihai Corps is currently strong. The Beihai Corps is responsible for the stability of Wulan State and the 5 countries in Eastern Europe. It's the best choice to help the Arctic Ocean Command. Of course, Comrade Tianlan has made contributions, but he is still too young. The heavy losses of the Snowdance Corps are also related to his immature decision-making. I suggest that Comrade Tianlan's position be adjusted. He can retain the rank of Marshal, but it's better to choose an old and prudent comrade as the new commander of the Snowdance Corps. Li Tianlan looked at Tang Wansen jumping up and down coldly. His performance was recognized by countless people. People from the Prince Group, the Special Warfare Group, and the Southeast Group spoke out one after another in favor of withdrawing the Snowdance Corps. At the same time, Li Tianlan's position as the commander of the Snowdance Corps was revoked, and he retained the rank of Marshal. Among them, Prime Minister Chen Fangqing of Zhongzhou State spoke. The direction of the meeting was changing irreversibly. Comrade Tianlan is responsible for the heavy losses of the Snowdance Corps. In this regard, I think Marshal Li should give everyone a reasonable explanation and an explanation. As for Eastern Europe, there is no problem with the agreement. But after the Beihai Corps is stationed in Wulan State, there are some things. Tang Wansen's voice was still ringing. Li Tianlan laughed. Explanation, there is indeed an explanation. Li Tianlan said blandly, I have sent someone to count. By the time I attended the meeting, more than 1,000 elites of the Snowdance Corps had died in the hands of the devil troop of the Wang family of Beihai. In addition, I was seriously injured in the raid of the Wang family of Beihai. Old Tang, is this the explanation you want? Everyone's heart suddenly trembled. Li Tianlan's words were clearly saying that the Wang family of Beihai was in the way of the chaos in Eastern Europe. No matter whether this was true or not, it was not good to say it out. Besides, Tang Wansen glanced at Li Tianlan with a smile, without any panic. His old face was twisted like a chrysanthemum. The Wang family of Beihai? The devil troop? He said with a smile, Marshal Li is still too young, so you are deceived by some rumors from the outside world. I have served in Beihai and Zhongzhou state for many years, but I have never heard of the Devil Troop. Marshal Li said that the Devil Troop belongs to the Wang family of Beihai. Do you have any evidence? His smile disappeared and he said fiercely, "You must produce evidence today." In the chaos in Eastern Europe, the Sword Emperor turned the tide on his own. If it weren't for him, Snow Country and Wulan State would have nothing to do with Zhongzhou State today. Now the Wang family of Beihai is about to take over Snow Country and Wulan State, but you are here to slander the Devil Troop and try to erase the credit of Beihai. It's outrageous. Today? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. I really can't produce evidence today. He nodded and looked at the audience. But there are some things, including the Snowdance Corps and many other things, that the Wang family of Beihai must give me an explanation. He glanced at every big shot of the Southeast group and said coldly, "After the meeting, I will go to Beihai province and Mount Dibing. On the stage of formidable person of Mount Dibing, I will ask for an explanation from Wang Tianzong face to face." The warm atmosphere in the conference room suddenly became dead silent. Go to Mount Dibing, go to the stage of formidable person, and ask for an explanation from Wang Tianzong. That touch of madness completely broke out, with a raging fire burning wildly. Tang Wansen was stunned for a long time. He stared into Li Tianlan's eyes and said word by word, "How dare you go to Mount Dibing? Mount Dibing is also in Zhongzhou State. Why can't I go there?" Li Tianlan's voice was cold, and his killing intent was undisguised. "You slandered the Wang family of Beihai, and you still dare to go to Mount Dibing?" Tang Wansen was as fierce as an old dog. "Slander?" Li Tianlan laughed wildly. "You can say that this is slander, and I can think that you are ignorant. After all, your surname is not Wang. But when I stand on Mount Dibing, I will kill anyone from the Wang family of Beihai who dares to say that this is slander." Tang Wansen suddenly became furious. He stretched out his hand and almost pointed at Li Tianlan's nose and scolded, "You little bastard who doesn't care about the overall situation. How dare you go to Mount Dibing to kill people? Even your grandfather didn't dare. Do you know what you are doing? Do you know what the overall situation is?" Li Tianlan looked at him coldly and said seriously and calmly, "What is the overall situation? Ignorant, bastard, arrogant. This kind of person who doesn't care about the overall situation shouldn't be here. Get out, get out, get out now. I suggest that Li Tianlan be removed from all positions immediately. This bastard is destined to commit treason like Li Guangtu. Zhongzhou State can't tolerate such a scourge. Li Guangtu is sanctimonious. What did he hand in? Bullshit." Tang Wansen's angry roar, which almost lost his mind, shook the whole conference room. Li Tianlan looked at him, and his eyes became deeper and calmer. He looked at the twisted face and asked again, "What is the overall situation?" Marshal Li is really too impulsive. Yi Dongsheng stood up and said calmly, "There is no devil troop in the Wang family of Beihai. If you want to explain, we can negotiate with the Wang family of Beihai. You go to Mount Dibing, which is ignoring the overall situation. At least the reason you said is not enough for you to desecrate the forbidden area of Mount Dibing." Li Tianlan said, "Oh," and asked, "Desecrate?" Yi Dongsheng did not speak. On the stage of formidable person, Yi Dongsheng's name did not appear on that stone. But the names of countless elders and ancestors of the Yi family were on that stone. The names of the Wang family of Beihai, the Southeast group, countless people who did not have the surname Wang, their ancestors and elders were also engraved on the stone of formidable person. At that time, hundreds of years of glory had been accumulated. His eyes were extremely firm. "You mean my reason is not enough?" Li Tianlan looked at Yi Dongsheng and asked. "Yes, it's not enough." Yi Dongsheng's voice became more and more firm. Li Tianlan said, "Oh," and laughed. "If it's not enough, then it's not enough. I'm not going to find any more reasons." He looked at the audience with a smile and asked, "Tell me, what is the overall situation? The overall situation you are talking about, whose overall situation is it?" You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.